Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, will you please stand for the Chairman of West Northamptonshire Council, the Vice Chairman of West Northamptonshire Council, and the Chief Executive of West Northamptonshire Council. Thank you.
Good evening. Please be seated. The Democratic Service Manager will now read out apologies received.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have received from Councillors Muna Kali, Alan Chandler, Karen Cooper, Julie Davenport, Gareth Eales, Terry Eales, Penny Flavel, Terry Guilford, Cheryl Hawes, Jamie Lane, Charles Manners, Ken Pritchard, Aziza Rahman, Emma Roberts, Catherine Russell, Zoe Smith and Winston Strachan. We've been notified the following councillors may be late: Councillor Pinder Chauhan, Councillor Rosie Humphreys and Councillor Laura Stevenson.
Excuse me, Chair. Thank you. Right, okay. Was that apologies for some? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda. Sorry.
Just to say I didn't give my apologies, I'm here. Traffic was all right, thank you.
Okay, any more apologies? No. Okay, we'll proceed to item 2 on the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest from members and officers? No. Item 3, minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 28th of November. Are these agreed?
Chair. I've got my hand up, Chair.
Okay. Right, thank you.
I've got my hand up, Chair.
Okay. Done. Councillor Stone?
I wanted to raise an objection to the minutes, Chair, on the ground that we follow the Nolan principles and the minutes embody institutional misogyny. And I think because of the epidemic we're facing in terms of violence against women and girls, and we are a publicly responsible body, we should make sure that nothing we do institutionalises misogyny.
Councillor Stone, is there a specific wording in the minutes that you want to change?
Yes, Chair. It refers to chairman.
Okay. Okay. Right. Okay, we'll move on. Is there any other amendments, or can I now accept these minutes? Agreed. Thank you. Item 4.
Can we vote on them, please?
Chairman's announcements. It's my sad duty to advise members that former Daventry District Councillor Annette Dunn passed away recently. Former Councillor Dunn represented the Drayton Ward on Daventry District for 8 years, from 2004 to 2012. I would also like to welcome Kate Ironside, Senior Lecturer in Journalism and Media from the University of Northampton, who is here with some of her students to observe the meeting. I wish you a warm welcome, and I hope you find the meeting very interesting. Can all councillors please be aware that the projector screen behind me is not working? And I'd just like to say that you've probably, or hopefully you've noticed, I'm in the colours of the Saints. Prior to the council meeting tonight, I went down to the Grosvenor Centre and did an interview with ITV and publicised how West Northamptonshire Council is hosting the Rugby Ladies World Cup and supporting a lot of businesses and the revenue that will bring in. Thank you. If we go to item 5, public participation. There have been 3 requests to address the meeting under this item. Tina Matthew has asked to address the Council in relation to item 6, the budget. Ms Matthew, if you'd like to take a seat, you have up to 3 minutes to speak. Hold on a moment, we'll see if we can get your microphone working. Thank you, Ms Matthews. My apologies. Please continue.
Thank you. So I am so proud being here today as a representative of the Umbrella Climate Emergency Action Hub community and of 1,000 Voices. I came here to talk about WNC's lack of investment and inaction to clean up Northampton's toxic air, and about your new strategy, which clearly states that pollution levels will go up again before they come down. That's devastating for the local community, despite the rhetoric you put out about taking action. But this has been superseded by the recent antics of West Northamptonshire Council. We believe that the estate's asset process and its outcome was a deliberate attack to destabilise our organisation. We are led to believe we live in a democracy where freedom of speech is encouraged. WNC's actions seem to counter this entirely. As elected members, your duty is to hold assets for the community and make decisions in their best interests and with them. They are not your personal assets to do with as you wish. Listen to those in the community who have responded to your WNC Good News story on social, and also take a look at Umbrella's social pages too. Look at what the community are saying to you. Less than 3 months after our first 1,000 Voices action, we started being harangued by the council.
Ms Matthews,
Yeah?
you're speaking on the actual budget. Is
I
there
am.
anything further pertaining to the details of the budget
Okay,
in the papers?
I'll move on, I'll leave that. So this is in regards to the budget. Maybe if you truly valued community, we could review investment choices from that perspective and invest in things that truly matter, not build, baby, build. Stopping our operations was the first way to get at us. Taking our massively cherished, loved and supported home was the next. You are removing vital connections and support networks within our community, and it will cost you money if you want to put it in that context. You have something of real value to the local community. They are telling you about what it means to them. I don't need to. And all the time, you're invested in trashing our work and our community to improve it, to put something better in. Better for who, I ask you? You couldn't hear any louder from the community. They love Umbrella, they understand the work of 1,000 Voices, and they want us to stay.
Thank you, Ms Matthews. I'll call our second speaker, Farzana Aldridge, to address the Council on the budget. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I speak here tonight as a resident of West Northamptonshire. Thank you to all the officers for their hard work in pulling the comprehensive papers together. A budget which is set with the corporate plan objectives as a basis needs to demonstrate that it will build on successes of previous years. I have significant concerns about the Council's track record to date. As a resident, I am seeing horrendous numbers of potholes, massive amount of fly tipping in rural and urban areas, and we are the worst area in East Midlands for air pollution. Data shows increase in poverty, huge increase in food banks, increasing inequalities in life expectancy. There is poor infrastructure of affordable public transport, and our economy is in decline. Many businesses are failing, many local areas look neglected and uninviting. Some statutory services have been judged by government bodies to be inadequate, such as SEND and housing. And our reserves are depleting, contract management is variable. There is unnecessary spend on high-profile projects not valued by residents, e.g. the town centre. Taking into account the overspend and use of contingency, the overspend at the end of this year will be around 15.2 million. The cumulative budget gap by 28-29 is forecasted at 48 million, and by 29-30 by over 57 million. I am concerned that West Northamptonshire could be heading for significant deficits over the next 2 years, and possibly heading towards bankruptcy beyond that. As a resident, I feel this is neither desirable nor acceptable. In terms of the proposed budget, I have many areas of concern, and I'm highlighting just 3 of these this evening. By 2026, the Council's reserves over a 2-year period will have depleted by nearly 22 million. Such a trend for another 4 years could bring reserves down to unacceptable levels. Base budget pressures of 35.2 million have been identified for the next year. Some of the solutions to secure a balanced budget are particularly concerning. For example, there is high dependency on efficiency and income generation, with a target of 24.6 billion to be achieved. Of this, over 7 million is to come from adult social care, client contributions and packages. This will have a devastating effect on adults who are highly vulnerable. 5.1 million earmarked for digital technology and innovation has been taken out. Surely this is being short-sighted and will lead to costly and inefficient use of technologies. As a resident... Can
I ask you to sum up now, please?
Yes, my summing up is coming. As a resident, I would like West Northamptonshire to be a vibrant and exciting place in which to live, where all can succeed and thrive. I do not have confidence that the financial and strategic planning for the future by this Council will achieve my aspirations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aldridge. Our third speaker is Ian Bates, and he's asked to address the Council in relation to the budget. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Bates.
Sure, thank you. So I'm talking to you as a guardian. I'm talking to you as a guardian of the planet, and I'm talking to you as a guardian, as a parent, not just of my children, but of all the children on the planet. They are our future. I wasn't the first to say that. I want you to hear what I have to say, and I want you to hear it through your heart and not your ears. I want you to hear it through an open ears and then an open heart. And I'm speaking to you not as counsellors, but as living human beings who, like me, are guardians of this planet and the future for our children. I'm talking to you about the budget and about the climate strategy, the West Northants climate strategy. Let me tell you what the situation is worldwide. These facts come from the United Nations. So currently, 95% of countries will miss their deadlines for achieving their goals for 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. So what does 1.5...
Mr.
Sorry,
Bates, you're talking about climate
For
strategy
sure, yeah.
at the moment. You
I
need
understand.
to talk about the budget. Can
Yeah,
you...
it was just, sorry, I just felt disrespected because people weren't listening.
Okay. Could we continue and bring your points forward regarding
Sure.
the budget, please?
I'm not surprised you don't want to hear this. There are members of this council who are climate deniers. There are members of this council who literally don't believe the science. One of them was leading the finances. You know, what chance have we got if you've got people in positions of power who don't even believe the science? They think they know better. So what does 1.5 degrees mean? It means that, and by the way, the new reports are telling us this will happen permanently within 5 years, sorry, within 10 years. What it means is that 1.2 billion people will have to start to consider relocating where they live. 1.2 billion,
Bates.
1.2 billion is
up.
1,200 million people.
Mr. Bates,
And they'll be
your
on the
3
move.
minutes has now completed.
Thank you very much, yeah.
We will now
So what
move
I
to the
want you
next
to-
item on the agenda. Thank you. There is no one further to speak on the reserve list. Mr. Bates, could I ask you to be quiet, please? Could I, if you cannot be quiet, you will be asked to leave the chamber. Could you please be quiet, Mr. Bates? All right. Could I bring this to order and ask for you to be removed from the chamber? Thank you. We will now go to item 6 on the agenda. The 2025-26 final budget and medium-term financial plan. A protocol has been circulated regarding the procedure for debating and the steps that we will follow. I understand there's also a piece of paper on your table talking you through the process. So step 1, the budget is proposed and seconded. So I will invite Councillor Malcolm Longley to introduce the report and move the budget. He has 30 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'll start by saying probably the most important part, and that's thanking the team that's been involved in putting this together. It's led by Martin. You all know Martin very well, and we've come to know what a reliable guy Martin is. But also his teams, too many to mention, but also every directorate's been involved, and a lot of the officers, a lot of people in this room. So there's been a lot gone into this, and I'd say thank you very much for your efforts. Just the headlines here is a council tax increase of 4.99%. And as that lady said, productivity of 24.6 million, but service pressures of 35.2, primarily from children, adults, temporary accommodation, things we're all very familiar with already now this. But we did get an improved settlement, and this price as well makes the balance. So the conclusion I will come to is that it'll be a balanced budget due to offsetting the increased demand by price and productivity. And productivity is the key. And I bang on about it every year, and I'm going to bang on about it this year as well. But it's a classic solution. Without the productivity, we will not balance the budget. So, moving on. I always start with 24-25, the current year, because budgets don't come in isolation. On April the 1st, nothing changes. It's a continuum. So how this year ends up will dictate quite a lot of what happens next year as well. So I'll start with that. And in period 9, we reported and publicly reported that we were thinking that we would end up with a £5 million overspend at the end of this financial year. Now, that's what we reported. And the reason we reported that number, because we were getting continuing increases in the children's spending on the one hand, and some decreases on the other. And we thought, I'm trying to judge where this is going to end up. Bear in mind, we've still got a quarter to go. We expect to improve that position, though it might get slightly worse in the short term. Improve that position, and because always in the last quarter of any business normally, but in this particular case, it's always the case every year. You flush out old budgets. People that keep good budgeters keep a little bit in the back pocket. They always do. All the departments do it if they can, and so those come out and they come up at the year end, and so we realign some budgets. We look at capital releases and so on and so forth. So I would expect that to improve, but we'll see. But that highly depends on we don't get too much bad news from the children. The adults are already showing quite good improvements, by the way. The problem we've got here, and I'm going to say this probably several times, is the arrangement we have with the Children's Trust. It's a ridiculous arrangement in that we have the responsibility for picking up the tab, but we have no control of events. So it's as ever, as we're doing this year, we're never quite sure until the final figures. So that's why we're being very cautious at this stage on the year end. Right, so the year end on the adults budget, it's been a so-so year for adults, but it's been an overspend of significance. But that was in the early stage. It seems to be back in control now and edging towards an improved situation by the year end. But it will still end up with an overspend of 9.3 million, we think. Maybe a bit less than that when it turns out. But and that's in a budget of 142.9 million. But it's big numbers, as you can see, so we have to contend with that. Place, however, is year-end outlook, very well-managed operation, and that's got a 95.1 million budget. Looks like we're going to end up with an underspend of 680,000 and probably improvement on that. In fact, period 10 is showing that already, so I'd anticipate further gains there, so that's one of them on the good side. Children's budget, now there's an interesting one, of course. I've just spoken about, and it's an improved position on last year's budget. So it's gone in a better direction. It's several key offices of ours are embedded in there, and we've got very good relationship on a day-to-day basis. But of course, we've got no control over what they do in financial matters. They hopefully know best. But what we have got is serious investments going in there, which will produce savings. We're purchasing more and more properties that will house children, and that will take it out of the sector into our own control. Good cost saving, good thing to do, we like to think. But the year-end outlook is showing an 8.61 million, that's period 10's overspend, on a 94.5 million budget. Now, you've got to bear in mind here that that budget is 56% of the total budget, because the North get the other 44%. So their real budget is quite a bit higher than that. And as I say, it's not fully accounted for in this financial year yet, but that will come out in the wash. Now, communities and opportunities, year-end outlook, budget of 13.65, forecast of an overspend of 1.28. That's an unfortunate situation. We expect that to improve as the year goes by. But that's mainly caused by homeless issues. Chief Exec is what you'd expect, an underspend. Well done, Chief Exec. And our forecast is to further improve on that. And the financial area, as you would expect, again, will be under budget by the year end. And that's a 17.2 million budget. The technical control budget and this is the centre. This is really where you try and pick up all the problems that go on during the year, whether it's high inflation that took place, high inflation that nobody predicted it would go as high as it did. That had to go somewhere, and it's things like that that get picked up in the centre. But we also, as you're all very well aware, we always put a serious contingency in that area for, well, history has taught us that's the thing to do, so that's what we do. And we will use that this year, and we're showing a 12 million underspend, but that's really a lot to do with contingencies and things like that. We're using 10.1 million of that. I'd expect a little bit of an improvement as the year end comes around. Well, we've had some of the problems. We had a 4.3 million pay inflation during the year. Well, that's a serious hit. The whole contingency budget in the first place was 16.1, of which just over 10 was general contingency, 10.1. So that's the balancing area. The budget, I'll talk about savings, talk about productivity, because this is, we put into this current year's budget a 24.1 million savings targets and agreements with all, and it looks at the moment it's going to come out slightly north of 22, so it might do a little bit better than that. Slightly short of what we'd expect, but what we'd like. But, Treasury, I'm going to deal with a bit later, because but that's been another good year as well, managed operation, and always contributes to the year end, always. So the year end conclusions for this year, it's been another tricky year due to children's, adults overspends, I said, but compensated by use of contingencies, other underspends, and of course the productivity savings I've just alluded to. So the likely final outcome, which is the one that everybody will finally go away with, is it'll be close to balance. I wouldn't like to say it's going to be in balance at this stage, because it depends on where the children's goes, but it's not going to be hugely far away. So I think, you'll no doubt follow me very closely on that one as the months go by. Housing revenue account. Now that's been a disappointing year, as we all know. We've had a situation where it was at one point showing quite a significant loss, of which we can't do that. We're not allowed to do that, but we've put suitable actions in, and we're now showing a balanced budget. So that's back on track as far as the budget's concerned. However, there's an action plan that's been produced to get some stimulus in there, and hopefully that will show credit in the following years. Now, that's got to be implemented during 25-26, but the income on it is 60.7 million domestic, 1.2 on non-domestic, 3.6 on service. So it's a budget and input of 65.5, and the cost of the service 28.5. So we're spending 19.2 on repairs, and but we're showing a fair bit on interest as well, on management and interest and things like that. So it's got a bit of a way to go, that. So that's, anybody that's associated with that will understand. So the year-end forecast for them is that we'll have overhead costs of 32 million, total retained amount of 33.5, and repairs and maintenance of just over 18. So I would see that there's some doubts about some of the projects. So I think we're going to see some changes there in the new year. So I'm moving on to this coming year's budget. That's 25-26, and that's a total of 960 million. So it's an awfully big number, and but you then take the dedicated school grant off of 527, and that leaves a total net of 432 million, and that's financed by 273 council tax, 103 business rates, and sundry grants, etc., 56 million. But the 432 is the figure that will be reported on. So that's the one you can keep your eye on as the year goes on. And the key points, again, unsurprisingly, the budget is balanced. You all know that, anybody's read it. 432 million, that's the reported number. Capital to spend, now this won't be all spent in that year, but and I'll explain how the makeup of this in a moment. of 181 million, which is a huge number, and a council tax of increase of 4.99%, as in previous years, including the 2% adult. Now, the brief explanation of the method of getting to this, the method of preparation of this budget, is we started back at early September. There'd already been with a first pass and the Star Chamber, and all the directors were very anxious to come and tell us what they want to do, and we had a meaningful discussion with them, as you might expect. And anyway, that all goes the first pass, and then get a series of sessions after that to see where, to hone into it. We call them budget clinics. I'm not sure what the directors call them, but that's what we call them. And then we finally end up having got all that together with robustness tests and a believability view. Do we believe it? Do we believe it? Can I stand here and look you in the eye and say, yeah, I think it's right? And that's. So, but as I say, all budgets are continuant, so it starts from the year end. You can't ignore what's going to happen this year because it flows through. We try to take that very much into account. Right, well, we're talking about productivity and invest to save programs. That's what will make or break next year's budget. And we set up the Capital and Assets Board. A number of you are well aware of that, I'm sure. And that's been set up now 3 years. It's been very successful, I'd like to think. And start off with, if you come along with a capital programme, and I'll be talking to these a bit later, you end up with the statutory programmes where you can't do anything about it. Well, get on with it. So that gets a tick. Second one that comes along and somebody else is paying for it, fully funded. Well, that invariably, not always, but invariably gets a tick. Then you come on with the third one, that's productivity or invest to save, some might like to know it, transformation, some people call it, I don't like the word. And that's all a function of the benefits that flow from it. It either works or it doesn't. And it gets, now, after that, and it gets a bit thin now because the money's, those usually take most of it. You end up part funded, again, the same performance goes through. Essential schemes, and that's usually where you're saving some of these, it's negative consequences if you don't do it, sort of thing. Regeneration, and there's big numbers there. And we're just under 40 million in additional programmes in this year's budget. Now, the government provisional and final settlement, that was quite good to us, generally positive. Social care grant was up 2.4, children's 1.1, new homes bonus 2.5. Now, there was a recovery grant that we fell down on because this county wasn't perceived as being in need, not a needy county. So we didn't do as well as we might like to have done. This is compared to the draft budget. And then there's an extended producer responsibility, 4 million. And that's all about getting, that's one, I think they've specifically geared that up for Jonathan. And I'm quite sure of that because that's all to do with recycling and things of that nature and putting responsibilities down the chain. Good thing. So the Children's Trust, now there can be any little doubt about this. There's the most significant risk due to the ridiculous arrangement I talked about earlier, but it is by far and away the biggest risk, as we all know. Total budget, 180.2 million, again, very big number, and our share is a little bit less than 100 million. So, so that's a net increase of 7.7 when adjusting for transfer of legal budgets, and one thing. It looks superficially as if it's a reduced budget, but it's not. There's been transfers in and out, and in fact, the adjustment ends up at 7.7. But the productivity programs in that budget, and that's in the sum agreed with them, is 12.2. You can see the risk, where the risk lies. And so if they produce their 12.2 and stick to the budget, next year should be a breeze. But history would say that's a big risk. So, and the achievement of our balanced budget, of their balanced budget, is dependent on them hitting their productivity. And so, there we go. Adult social care, continual pressures again. There's nothing new here, the same as last year, year before, and the year before that. So, and one of them is due to a government change. which is surprising, and that's the change of care with people with assets below 23,250. Now, it surprised me that. So there's increases in charges there. But, pressures are going to be 15.9 million, we think, and the budget's at 149.9. So again, that's likely to be a risk area, perhaps not quite as much as the children's, but nonetheless a risk. Place and economy, budget 96.9 million, includes 5.2 million productivity in there. Now, history supports the expected delivery of this budget. They usually budget well. They're a canny bunch. But you can see the risks involved, and we all know that this department could do with more should it be available, not to mention potholes. Communities opportunities, their budget's 14.15, productivity of 3 million ingrained in that. We expect that to happen. Chief Exec and Education said we expect that to happen. I wouldn't expect it to be any different. Finance, you would expect that to happen. Productivity 1.7 million in that. Central control, this is where, of course, you end up exactly as we've done this year. And that's got a budget of 36.4, big number. And that's very significant contingencies in there, in excess of 11 million. But that includes Treasury and contingencies, I say 11.3 million. And the public health grant, that's in excess of 20 million. So all sectors there currently are pretty much on track and expect them to stay there. So there's as the lady earlier said, there's a productivity program in total, and that excludes the children's productivity, which is separate, of 24.6. And that comes around from charging and income, so that's price, as I referred to earlier. And good or bad, that's what it is. Demand and prevention, that's trying to do things at the front end so you don't get them coming in later on and with more expensive care, so it's public health will be part of that, but that's 4.9 million. Process and policy initiatives, that's, sort of modifying, say, home-to-school transport, capitalising lighting systems, new lighting systems, things like that, all items of that nature, 2.6. Redesign and reorganisation, that's things like we've done, the revs and bends, for example, that's 5.2, and buying and commissioning, 3, that makes you 24.6. So that's where they're going to come from. I'll talk about the Treasury position here. Back in the investing day, we had 109.3 million invested, and we now have 104.5, and that brings in income, of course. And back in investing day, we had 50.2 million pounds worth of external loans. That's we'd loan, or Borough, or wherever it was, had loaned to external parties. And we've now got that down to 34.4 million on the basis that I've always taken the view we're not a bank. LOBO loans are down from 53 to 28. And all in all, we're down to, the borrowings in total there are down from to 317 as far as WNC are concerned. LOBO loans down, and 480 is the total borrowings and net. But the CFR, or the capital financial requirement, is 1123, 1.123 billion, so we've got a significant headroom. So the summary is 4.99% increase, 11.3 million contingencies, highly dependent on productivity offsetting, and children's number 1 risk, adult care number 2, home to school transport number 3, and temporary accommodation number 4, and largely mitigated as best we can by real estate purchases, and 24.6 productivity. So, and the core spending is up by 6%. So those are the key points. So there's additional base growth. I don't think there's anything there. Balanced budget, base budget, right, okay. So business rates are up 1.7. Now the NI is an interesting one. That's up 1.2%, and that's another 2.6 million. But the government have given us 3.1 in settlement. That's interesting because that actually gives us, on the face of it, a profit, but that does not take into account the Children's Trust, so that will be so they don't get anything because they're not us, or the HRA, or indeed, more importantly, our suppliers, because that's going to be a big hit that's going to come in. So the capital plan is 181, and that is really, there's 123.4 already existing, going through in one form or one shape or another, 33.4 new projects we know of, and another 23.9 in the pipeline. Now, all, as I've explained earlier on, a lot of these are geared to productivity, so this is absolutely key to us next year. And that's children's homes and adult homes. Reserves, you all want to know about that. Lady talked about reserves. Well, the core reserve, the general balance, which is the one that's important, is 35.9. That's up 900,000 from last year. Broadly the same. 35 million is going to end up at the year end, at the next year end or thereabouts. Other reserves, and these are a lot of them are all sorts of things involved. 33.9, ring fence 12, and the COVID reserve still about a little bit there, oddly enough. 0.3, that's 82.2. So I think, and if you need to read the 151 officer's statement to be happy with that. Dedicated school grant, 527. I'm not going to go into detail. Are we doing time, right? 7 minutes. 7 minutes, okay. And we've got a treasury program, which is always good. That's bound to contribute. The pension fund, I always talk about the pension fund. Now that comes up for formal re-evaluation starting 31st of March in a month's time, and that'll go on for about 6-9 months. And they'll tell us precisely what the actuaries will tell us, and that will tell us what we have to contribute and what we don't. But the good news is last time I reported in, it was 153% funded at 3.6 billion. Well, the fund's done a bit better and the liabilities have gone down, so we're now 165% covered. That's pretty good. I think anybody with a pension here is okay. Medium-term plan, there's a 26 million gap on the face of it for the following year, 26-27, but I wouldn't be too worried about that because that's always contingency on, you know, and it's prudency squared. So I'm not too worried about it. Thereafter, it's a 10 million gap. So I would see, might have a little bit of push for the following year, but thereafter, if those forecasts are good, then it's much easier. So, but next year, you know, it'll be the same as this year, I'm fancying, a bit tricky. And the HRA account, the rent's got to 62.5, but I think that, and it's a 2.7% rent increase. Whilst I'm here, I'll talk about the 4-year summary, as we're now all coming to an election, as you may or may not have appreciated. The highlights are we balanced, assuming we're going to balance this year, we will balance the books for 4 years. The capital, the borrowings for WNC will be slightly down, more or less the same really, but slightly down, although the HRA will be up. And remember, we've been through a COVID crisis, a financial crisis, an inflationary crisis due to the Russia, and so there have been a few things going on. So 4 years of balance booked, strong capital programs, strong reserve situation, and the item is productivity for the future. Right, I've got 5 minutes, so I'm going to come to the Labour amendments potentially, the proposals, and run through item 1 and 2. This is a matter of allocation. I always say every year, looking for good ideas. We got some ideas in here coming through. Allocation, we've already got a programme going on flight tipping, very important thing. I'm going to make sure that you get them in there. You know, but there's no budgetary problem on that. There's a good idea, it should be done anyway. Number of neighbourhood wardens, there's a contract here that exists based on income, and therefore it's the case of extra income, it'll happen anyway. Better community launch and play, not happy with this, don't think it's a good idea at all. Dangerous idea, we think. Better in a controlled environment, and the suggestions refers to the community's engagement team. Walkways, yeah, allocation argument again. There is a budget already, should, in my opinion, quite adequate. Make sure it's done, that's the important thing there. Free parking, there is a major programme in train there, and it'll be a cost-neutral programme. and there will be some decent benefits come out in certain areas, but it'll be cost neutral. And the housing officer, we don't think there's a demand for that, as that's already working quite well. And peer review, good idea, no problem with that. We're getting that free from the LGA, so we'll definitely take that up with them. Lib Dems, the first two are green and clean, that's PVs. If you look at the programme we've got for neutral 2030, it is strongly dependent on PVs. Big programme. If we do that programme, we will be neutral. If we don't do that programme, we won't. So I've spoken to Jonathan, and I'm hoping he's going to get deeply involved in that. But you don't need any more money. I've already allocated that. And so improved life chances. Now this is a public health system. They've got a £20 million budget in excess. We shouldn't have a problem with that. They should deal with that themselves. Don't need any more money there, I don't think. Family hubs, there's already a programme going there. But there's no revenue requirement put here. If there's a need for it, get stuck in with the team. And if there's a credible business plan for it, yeah, no problem. But it's got to be a plan for it. No need to put any more money in my view at this stage. Purchasing a housing, always interested in a good productivity programme. If there's a good programme there, put a budget plan in, we would do it. If not, we won't. Thriving villages and towns, that's already £1 million out there. So I'd be very wary of empty properties, and I'll explain that to you probably outside the meeting if you need to do so. Very dangerous thing to do, to buy derelict property, or not necessarily derelict, but empty ones. Industrial ones I'm talking now. I know a bit about that. And the film and TV production, that will depend on the business case. So, and robust, now this is one I did have a smile at this one. To reduce councillors' allowances. Now, how was I going to deal with that? I wonder. There's an independent panel coming on. It wouldn't be right, would it, for us here tonight to decide on the new council's pay? Couldn't do it. Shouldn't do it. There's an independent panel, they'll report back. At your May council meeting, it would be up for whoever's here from here to decide that. So, Chair, I'd like to move for the budget, and at the same time, I've covered number 7, that's the housing revenue account budget as well. So I'd like to move for them to be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. I will now invite Councillor Kevin Parker to second the budget.
Happy to second the budget and reserve my right to speak, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. We'll now go to step 2, the Labour Group amendment, and I will invite Councillor Keith Holland Delamere to propose the amendments on behalf of the Labour Group. 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the hard work of the finance team in putting this budget together and balancing it from an initial gap of over 50 million. I also want to thank all the officers who've helped us pull together our amendments, particularly the Deputy Section 1 Officer, James Smith, and our political assistant, Josh. For yet another year, we continue to see local government struggling to meet statutory requirements within budgets, with soaring adult social care and more children becoming dependent on council support. We are still reeling under the 14 years of cuts and austerity from the last government, and the medium-term financial futures of many authorities look bleak. But that does not excuse the financial decisions made by this administration in this budget. I will admit to being frustrated that we are once again seeing the same ideas trying to solve the same old problems, firefighting. The old tricks of changing processes by capitalising or charging costs to another budget are becoming more obvious. Nearly 10% of the savings in this budget have come from tinkering with the numbers. Looking at this budget, the most delicate we have seen since 2021. The phrase that chairs on the Titanic. This year, like the past 3 years, we have been utterly dependent on contingencies to make sure our budget is balanced. We are staring down a potential overspend of 5 million for the current year, but not factoring in that contingency of £10 million has also been used, so a £15 million overspend. This is not sustainable fiscal policy. We all know the phrase that the best cure is prevention, but there is barely 5 million of savings expected to be made through prevention in this budget. We cannot keep trying to solve these inherent problems in adults and children's services, home to school transport and temporary accommodation through the same old tactics that plainly do not work. We are continuing to plug ever-widening gaps in some areas at the expense of others. As I said to the Chamber last year, we're once again cruising in autopilot. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. The new Labour government has reaffirmed its commitment to properly funding local government. From next year, we will see multi-year financial settlements that will make our financial planning and budgeting much easier, and already we are seeing more money coming into local to fund local services. This year, for the first time in a long time, the financial settlement actually exceeded expectations and left us with a net surplus of 3.1 million, which our Section 151 officer has decided to boost our contingency with. Our amendments, which I present today, look to actively utilise these extra funding through tangible schemes that will positively benefit our communities, from cleaner and safer streets to more efficient house building. These are changes our residents need to see to believe this council is indeed working for them. These amendments are ambitious, but the time for stagnancy in hopes that things will work themselves out is over. Amendment 1 is Employer Clean Community Coordinator. Littering and fly tipping has become a cultural norm across much of West Northants, and it's no longer enough to just pick up after them. A clean community coordinator would work with our planning and waste departments, our amazing volunteers and our communities to create strategies and schemes to both prevent dumping waste and better target our collection efforts. Amendment 2 is community skips. Prevention needs to start playing a part in giving our residents cleaner streets. Brent Council has had many years of success in providing a community skip service to allow people to throw away their bulky goods instead of having to pay for their removal or just dumping them in the street. I know from experience in my role in community leadership back on Rectory Farm how these free skips have worked very well in the past, and I know they will be welcomed. Amendment 3, Neighbourhood Wardens. This is something we've asked repeatedly every budget meeting because they are desperately needed by our communities. Resources are currently spread far too thinly. Our rural communities are missing out whilst our urban areas need wardens whose time is not divided too widely. I'm aware of how stretched they are with the ever-increasing problems with fly tipping. Amendment 4 is Play Streets. Another amendment we've requested in the past. The scheme would play a huge part in expanding our children's social skills and making our communities more cohesive and safe. Currently, 75% of children spend more time inside than prison inmates. Councils who have adopted this scheme are seeing great results in terms of community happiness and children's mental health. And I think our streets also need to be made sure that they're used by the communities and not just for vehicles. Amendment 5, improving our walkways. For every journey by car, one is taken on foot. Therefore, our footpaths deserve just as much maintenance as our roads. It's a matter of public record how poor our paths are, with residents walking in the road to avoid tripping. This £1 million investment would go a great way to stopping this. I know in my ward there's a number of paths that have been in a terrible state, and the chances of getting them repaired under the current budget are minimal. And it will take decades, if at the current rate of spending, to get them sorted. Free parking, Amendment 6. We all know the importance of accessing nature and supporting our high streets. But by providing free parking at our underused car parks and country parks, this council would be making a small sacrifice for a huge benefit to our health and local economy. Amendment 7, a social housing officer. WNC is now responsible for all major social housing building. We know there is currently a staff reshuffle going on to accommodate this, but taking on such an important responsibility in a context of 4,000 people on the housing waiting list requires a dedicated officer to oversee, plan and advise on our efforts, particularly with our new targets from government. I'm aware of sites in my ward that are currently sitting empty and have been sitting empty throughout my 3 years in this council, and we still haven't seen progress. Amendment 8, customer service peer review. Our customers deserve to have their queries and issues resolved quickly and efficiently, but that is not the case for some. A peer review into our customer service would greatly assist in highlighting any gaps or improvements that can be made. This one in particular, I know that the waiting times have been really quite terrible at times in our services, and I welcome the fact that it has been acknowledged that we can use the LGA to try and get this forward. I sincerely commend these amendments to the Council because it is important that our residents see that we can deliver on our corporate priorities and spend their hard-earned money on schemes that benefit them. I understand that this is Councillor Longley's last budget, as he is not seeking re-election in May. I recognise the efforts he has put into stabilising the inherited disaster, many from the old Conservative-led council, and thank you for him for his efforts. And I thank you so much for all that you've done on this budget. We are nearing the end of the first 4 years of this authority, and the pace of change has been slower than I believe most of us would have wanted. Regardless of what happens in May, there will be difficult decisions to make for members of the incoming council. We need to have a bolder vision for our communities, a greater sense of bringing together the various groups and organisations that help shape this area. We need to work with them and not against them. We've had examples this evening. Hope and a future is longed for by many. Not more of the same old, same old. We need change. We need to listen more and we need to act more. I recognise the road ahead is a challenging one, but by working with our Labour MPs, our Labour government and our Labour Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, we can drive the change our communities have long overdue needed. I commend this to the Chamber.
Thank you. I will now invite Councillor Wendy Randall to second the amendment.
Thank you, Chair. I second the amendment and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. I will now invite speakers to comment on the Labour Group amendments.
Am I? Oh, I'm on. Thank you. Nobody told me. It's all right. It's telepathy these days, is it? Right. Let me itemise this just to make it easy. We will not be supporting the fly tipping thing because in the north they have a thing called first response, which involves all the councils and the outside bodies, including the probation service, and they do a wonderful job getting things moved a lot quicker. Unfortunately, this council doesn't do this, and so hopefully they will be in future when they can get organised on it. Community skips, yes, definitely they do help in areas where there is a lot of fly tipping. Neighbourhood wardens, I came across this and I just thought, you know, I asked my neighbourhood warden for some help to do clearing up some area in my ward, and they said, we don't have time, we just issue fines these days. And I thought, isn't this a bit contrary to what we want? Don't we want wardens to work with the community rather than just fining them when they do something wrong? So we won't be asking for action in neighbourhood wardens unless they actually go back to the old methods of working where they help councillors in their areas do the jobs that people want to see them do, not fining them. Play streets, yes, a wonderful idea. We definitely need to get children out in the fresh air, away from computers and enjoying themselves doing those sort of things. Improving walkways, yes, we've put a motion forward about this because we've got the 10 million extra capital spend for roads. We talk about active plans for people to walk and to enjoy things, and yet we spend so little on our pavements. And yet if you fall on your pavement, you break a hip, you break an arm, you break a leg, you're in hospital, it's costing a lot of money to put you right.
Councillor Beers.
Yes, I'm going to finish. It's very difficult going through a whole budget, Chair, without this. 2 hours free parking, yes, we do, but we should be encouraging public transport, maybe park and rides, because of the air quality issues. Housing delivery officers know this is, as far as we're concerned, this is duplication. We have a portfolio for housing, we have MPH. If they can't get their act together...
Councillor Beardsworth, the 2 minutes
and LGA,
are up. Thank
absolutely fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashraf.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to speak regarding the Clean Communities Coordinator's role. Litter is becoming a huge problem in West Northants, especially in some areas where it has just been accepted as the norm. Our proposed Clean Communities Coordinator would work with our volunteers, our communities and the council teams to create and enforce strategies that combat littering. I definitely believe, and I really want to stress, that this isn't a duplication of the role already carried out by the waste team and neighbourhood wardens, who do a fantastic job. This will be a strategic position. This officer will work across lots of departments like planning, licensing, waste, health, working alongside councillors, schools and the wider community, because we need joined up thinking on this issue. An example I like to share: when residents complain because a new restaurant has opened next door and ended up leaving rotting food outside their house for collection, a clean coordinator would have recognised this issue at the licensing stage and made recommendations to prevent it. Litter affects so many of our services, and we need to start working in silo. And most importantly, we need to be trying to get Northampton back to the top for cleaner and greener community, so that we could attract new businesses to Northampton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashraf. Councillor Brown. Councillor Ashraf, can you switch up? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a few things to pick up on. I think, as Councillor Longley said, a lot of this is around allocation issues rather than stuff that needs new budgetary provision. So certainly the £100,000 or so for fly tipping, we'll certainly have a look at the proposals there. I think when you start looking at clean community coordinators and then later on the social housing delivery officers, we need to be careful that we're not trying to do officers' jobs for them. You know, it's our job to set policy, to set strategy, to highlight residents' priorities. If we go down the route of starting to dictate staff structures, I think we're crossing the boundary on that one. So, you know, by all means, let's highlight the needs of residents and, you know, let's highlight the problems in our areas. But you know, I would certainly be wary of starting to reorganise council departments according to our personal whims. But you know, certainly I think the skip trial idea is a particularly good one that I'd be interested in. Likewise, the allocations for improvements to pavements. Excellent idea, and we can look at that within existing budgetary provisions. So, you know, more than happy to look at that. Just a couple of the political points that Councillor Holland-Delamere made. Says the pace of change has been slow. That's not what the LGA peer review said. They applauded us for the pace of change and for the progress made in our first 4 years. And he also made a comment about a potential light at the end of the tunnel in the spending review. Do have to be careful. Sometimes that light at the end of the tunnel is an express train coming your way. And the Deputy Prime Minister has already said that the spending review for local government will involve redistribution of funds. The County Councils network is highlighting the risk that money moves away from councils like ours and to the metropolitan boroughs and other Labour strongholds. So we're lobbying our MPs in the area to try and ensure that that doesn't happen. But there is a real risk that this spending review and the so-called extra money for local government does not come the way of West Northamptonshire.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Community skips. Fly tipping is an issue that affects everyone in West Northamptonshire. Clearing them up and prosecuting perpetrators has its issues, but it's clearly not enough to curb the issue. We need to give people an alternative beyond taking their bulky waste to the tip. Not everyone is able to do that. As my colleague mentioned in his speech, since 2018, Brent Council has been running a community skip scheme where residents dispose of up to 5 pieces of bulky waste free of charge, so as long as they show proof of address in the borough. Skips are monitored by staff, and there are strict rules about what goes into them, and people are dumping rubbish beforehand. The scheme has seen a massive curb in the amount of fly tips the council has to clear up, and has also become a place for community to come together with officers and councillors to educate people to waste and signpost residents to other services they need. This could be a great scheme to introduce to West Northamptonshire. I want to reiterate that our proposal is a 6-month trial. If it works, then we can look at a sustainable way to keep it going. If not, then we go back to the drawing board. But we need to be imaginative when looking at preventing this issue, because our residents had had enough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hack. Councillor Purser.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Longley says that the housing delivery of social housing is working well, and Councillor Brown said that this is an operational issue to be dealt with lower down the tree. I think it's about the political direction of this authority, and it's about the resources we allocate and where we put them. And so that's why we've got this amendment which would fund a housing delivery officer for social housing, whose job would be to really make it happen. We've sold more houses during the time of this authority than we've built by a significant margin. We have to take a different approach, and we've got to focus on delivering the building of social housing. Now, we brought this function back in-house, but we need to make sure it's properly resourced within the development team. And I won't talk too loudly because Councillor Lister might get big ideas, but I'm a fan of the development team because I think they do a really good job. But if they're going to be given the role of delivering social housing, they need to have the resources to do it. So this post is a post to unblock all the very significant problems we know exist in the delivery of social housing. I do hope we're going to get some direction from government and some ways of resolving this from government. But it is a difficult area where we really need to give it some serious welling. So that's why we're putting forward this as a dedicated job and it needs funding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Purser. Councillor Meredith. Councillor Purser, can you turn your mic off, please?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got 3 points I want to make, so I'm going to try to be as quick as I can. Fly tipping officer, yeah, I am for that, but it doesn't really go to say what that fly tipping officer would do. I mean, there's better ways, I think, of spending money to eradicate fly tipping. I mean, all the residents in particular Northamptonshire should be notified by letter or email explaining what actually happens with the fly tipping if they do fly tip and they'll get caught. The second one I want to raise is community skips. For 18 years now, I've tried to get community skips put in my area, and I've always been told, no, that's not viable because they're misused. And it is true. I have seen people coming from town and bringing rubbish and dumping it in the particular areas. So if there was a community skip put in the particular area and that got to be known, people would come and dump their rubbish from other areas where that skip was. Most of the skips, I believe, would be in Talavera, because that is where the majority of fly tipping is. The other thing I want to say is the housing delivery officer. Well, all I want to say to you is this. What are the present officers doing? Why do we need that? All the present officers from Northamptonshire Partnership Homes should be doing that work. So why are you in this alternative, in this amendment to your budget, saying you're going to have a housing delivery officer and that's going to cost £240,000? I think that's really a waste of money. And you're just explaining that the officers of Northamptonshire Council are not doing the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you.
Councillor Barrett, I'm afraid you'll have to go to the rear. Can we now take Councillor Duffy?
Thank you, Chair. Footpaths. Walking is the healthiest, oldest and most used form of travel in the world. For every journey taken in a car, one is taken on foot, according to the National Travel Survey. NTS showed almost every journey under a mile is taken on foot. Almost half of children get to school by walking, which is good, it's healthy, and 10% of people walk to work. Most probably because there's no bus connection. It should be the case that our footpaths are given just as much care as our roads, and consideration given for the safety of residents who often fall and trip, which not only affects them physically, it affects older people psychologically. Unfortunately, WNC isn't. We currently give Keir £30 million a year, £30 million a year. That's to look after our roads and our footpaths. But they only repair 3 footpaths a year on average. 3 a year. That's terrible. This lack of maintenance is showing, with many of our residents complaining of how terrible our paths are to walk on, how dangerous. Some even walk in the road to avoid tripping on raised paving slabs or where tree roots have raised and created trip hazards, which then puts them at risk of cars and bikes. Can I say about especially wheelchair users who cannot find an drop curb to get out
Councillor
of the
Duffy,
road?
your 2 minutes are up.
The £1 million
Do you want to sum up,
capital
Councillor
investment.
Duffy?
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Hallam. Councillor, thank you.
Cool, thank you. I just wanted to touch on the length of customer service calls because we had a cabinet meeting and I shared some stats at that meeting actually, which was the week after the government withdrew the winter fuel allowance. And the call stats that week were shockingly high. Now, the reason behind that is when you withdraw a winter fuel allowance from older residents in Parklands or in Brackley or in Middleton Cheney, they don't call Westminster, they call here. You change inheritance tax and you worry local families and local farmers, they don't call Westminster for advice, they call here, they make a local phone call. And you hit our local small businesses with crippling NI increases, shoving up inflation, they don't call Westminster, they call here. Our customer service advisors are listening. It's this Labour government that isn't.
Thank you. Councillor James Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to kind of express support regarding the SCIPs, which Councillor Keith Hollandair has proposed part of their amendments. I remember back in the days of councillor empowerment funds, and we did a very successful scheme in terms of with our resident association at the time. So it's something that has worked well in the past, and I think it's something that I'd support to see going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Sue Sharps.
Thank you. I bet that took you all day to think of that, Councillor Hallam. With almost daily reports from residents on the subject of rubbish, Neighbourhood wardens are a must, in my opinion, especially in rural areas. We must ask ourselves, why do we not have more of them? Currently, we have 12. Previously, we have 14. That is at the time that I could find the information. The theory developed by social scientist James Wilson in 1982, known as the broken window theory, suggests that graffiti, litter and uncared for streets are assigned to criminals, that it's open all hours. Most councillors in this room, if not all, will have heard of that study. The increase in fear turns to more crime, sadly. Our street wardens should be visible. It should be a visible sign of West Northants Council and a message that says, both in rural and urban areas, that we care. West Northants cares. We as councillors care. The cost will be, in the long term, for our communities, well worth paying. Now, I'm sorry, if you don't agree with that, then are we really doing our jobs well? Because time after time, this subject of rubbish comes up. And the remit of a warden is massive. It does dog fouling, litter, various other antisocial behaviour. And if for you as councillors you don't see that both urban and rural areas will benefit from them across our county, then, or West Northants of our county as it is currently, then I really think you need to take a long, hard look, because rural areas like Brackley and Towcester do not benefit currently. And as far as I could find out, Daventry hardly benefits as well.
Thank you, Councillor Sharps. Councillor McCord.
Madam Chairman, like last year, the Labour amendments are minuscule, proposing 1.1 million of change to a 432 million total. Customer satisfaction, therefore, remains high at 99.75% agreement to the administration's budget. Change, they promised, but alas, there was no extra cash. Instead, Labour have kicked care reform into the long grass, planning committees sidelined, funding formulas skewed to assist Labour councils, and the proposals to remove local from local government. Policy demonstrating hatred and contempt for those groups Labour judge don't vote for them, like private landlords, pensioners and farmers. While the WhatsApp groups give a real insight to their real opinions. Now, these amendments are mostly innocuous. I agree with free parking, won't vote against clean streets or better housing. I like the skip and fly tipping proposals and the amnesty, but the clean-up needs to be followed by a crackdown. I note the amendment says the skips will be manned. Danielle, you failed on your own woke speak test. Madam Chairman, I demand that these skips are personed. Now, play returns. No hula hoops, but I want to make a suggestion. On this, the 90th anniversary of the board game Monopoly, a Labour government edition. The aim of the game is like theirs. Everyone ends up skint. The rules, like their CVs, make them up and change them often. The play pieces would include a rubber dinghy to ferry people across the channel in record numbers and a private plane for never hear care. Go to Bond Street for a new wardrobe from your benefactors. Advance to Mayfair to your mate's swanky property. Go to jail for thought crimes on Facebook. Collect 200 grand in freebies when you pass go. Hotels for asylum seekers. Houses to be built everywhere with no restrictions, while the real criminals and everyone else are given a get-out-of-jail-free card.
2 minutes. Councillor Harry Barrett, please.
Are you okay, Ian, or do you want to take a moment? Mike, do you need 5 minutes? Are you all right? Okay. Glad you got it off your chest. And I think this informal use of this public floor as a counselling arena is, well, not really appropriate. 2 things from me. Malcolm, just a bit of sloppy language. You said we don't get bad news. You hope we don't get bad news from the children. I know what you're saying, it's just sloppy. Just be mindful of how that comes across, please, next time. From a Play Streets perspective, we've got this gap. We've got a huge gap, and we need to fill it, because everything we've spoke about today is preventative, yet something very similar and very small in terms of budgetary requirement has just been dismissed out of hand to a degree. Someone said earlier, I think it was you, Malcolm, apologies if it wasn't, when you went through, you said unsafe or something, words to that degree. Leeds City Council, Stockport, Woking, Bucks and Blackpool Unitary all disagree with that, and they've got really clear plans and how they run it really effectively and safely. So residents in one street in Leeds come together twice a month to organise Play Street. They themselves submit the road closure applications to Leeds City Council. The council provides road closure signs with neighbours or volunteers standing at either end of the road to escort residents in their cars to houses. It's helped bring the community together and fostered trust between otherwise silent neighbours. National picture. In 2013, it was found that 12% of children play out as opposed to 82% in the 1980s. The Play Streets model is completely resident-led. I think that's really important, beginning with interested residents consulting their neighbours on the proposals to close the streets. Residents then apply to the authority for permission to close a road. Residents have stewarded access to and from their house. Parents and guardians are responsible for their children. There is little or no cost to the council. What we suggested...
Councillor Barrett, your 2 minutes are up. Can you sum up, please?
Yeah, thank you for that. Just finally, the benefits. Physical activity on Play Street is equivalent to 14 additional weekly...
Councillor Barrett, 2 minutes are up.
You just said I could summarise.
Yeah, have you a closing statement?
Well, I'm making it. Can I make it? Thank you.
10 seconds.
Oh, well, okay. So it's 14 additional weekly PE lessons. 82 of parents said Play Streets had improved the child's social confidence and mental well-being for a very relatively low cost. Thank you.
I will now go back to Councillor Randall, who reserved her right to speak. I realise that Councillor Sharps has requested to speak, but she's already spoken and we can only take you speaking on an item once. Is that a point of order you want to raise?
Well, no, I've been put down to speak, but unfortunately my name wasn't called.
Did you press the cue, Councillor Jolie? Okay. That's fine. I'll permit you to speak. You haven't spoken, so I'll come back to you, Councillor Randall, in a moment. So, Councillor Sharps, can I ask you to switch your mic off so Councillor Jolie can speak, please?
I know, but I don't really want to turn it off because I want to speak.
Would you turn it off? So she can speak first? I don't...
It's my best smile as well.
Councillor Sharps, you've already spoken.
I realise I have, Chair, but I couldn't fit in what I wanted
Spark,
to say about
Sharp,
Play Streets in that time. I'm very sorry. I just want to make sure
Can
that
we
you
go to
understand
Councillor
that Play
Jolie,
Streets-
please?
Oh, please don't interrupt me, Councillor Lara. Please don't interrupt me. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Lara. I can't hear you.
Can I have,
I'm so
can I
sorry.
have order? I will ask you once again, Councillor Sharps, to switch your mic off, or the gentleman to my left will switch it off for you.
Well, as you said my name correctly, Chair, I will in fact turn it off.
Can I now ask Councillor Jolie to speak?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm really quite surprised that the customer services team, with 14 years of a Tory government, haven't been prepared with all the mess and chaos they have brought in. So personally, I don't think that you are in any way positioned to speak and question us after 7 months. So the customer service amendment, as we know, customer services is one of the most important departments in delivering residents in a quick and effective way. Customers are waiting up to 45 minutes, and sometimes they're even cut off when they're on hold. Did you know that? I'm sure you did, but that's all down to a Labour government, surely, isn't it? Nothing to do with you and your team. So the latest corporate plan performance review shows only 55% of our residents are satisfied with our customer services, a long way from the target of 90%. The LGA peer review last year highlighted a disjoint between our customer contact and our access strategy, moving the revs and bends customer services into a wider customer services has massively increased both workload and its complexity. AI assistant programme, likely including a bot for WNC website, has been scrapped since the draft budget, so the onus is still on phones. Last year's LGA peer review was a great catalyst in identifying issues and getting council to resolve them. Such a review into customer services would be a great objective way in finding out any holes in the provision. The LGA's principal advisor for the East Midlands has told us they would run such a peer review for between roughly
Councillor
15
Jolie, your
and
2
20k.
minutes are up.
So the remaining money will go on to training. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jolie. I will now go back to Councillor Randall, who reserved her right to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Longley, I lost my way actually in what you agreed with and what you didn't, so I'm trying to make some notes as I go along. Councillor McCord, I wish you had so much passion as that as when you were speaking as Chair of Scrutiny, so maybe we'll see a bit more of that in the future. Councillor Hallam, I in fact asked the customer care workers how many calls they got over the winter fuel allowance. And do you know how many they told me? Absolute zero. And they said, why would people phone to the council on winter fuel allowance? Nothing to do with the council. I went, I know, I raised it at Cabinet, but Councillor Hallam said that was the reason why. Actually, what we need to be looking at, Councillor Hallam, is you need to go and speak to the staff. You need to understand what the issues are. Taking on the council tax is the most, that is the one that's taken up all the calls. When you speak to the staff, they say they're dealing in debt stuff and their calls are now lasting more than 30 minutes, where before they would put them through to the department. So go and speak to your staff, Councillor Hallam, find out what the issue is. The reason that we put these amendments forward was using that extra money that come from government, because we thought if we tried a change, it would probably get totally rejected. So I know I've only got 2 minutes, so I haven't got long. Up to the 2-hour free parking was one that's really passionate to me, especially in the country parks, because what I have seen, as well as Brixworth and Daventry, is those cars are being pushed out onto the streets, which was something that I said would happen. And I do not feel that it's fair that we are charging from point of contact. You know, we need to make sure that people have got somewhere that they can go, children can play safely. And I think 2-hour free parking and for our unused parking in the town would actually help people and our businesses flourish. Obviously, cleaner streets. We are blighted with fly tipping
Councillor
in
Randall,
lots of areas.
your 2 minutes have come to an end.
I'll be good.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. I will now go back to Councillor Keith Holland-Delamere to reply to the debate.
Thank you for all those
2
comments.
minutes.
Yep, thank you for all those comments. I'm glad to hear that some of them have been receptive in terms of the free skips and the pavements, and also looking into our customer services. As someone who used to work in debt management and civil service, I know how frustrating it is trying to get through to a government department or a local authority when you have systems that just don't work for people. I thank my colleagues for all their comments. They really illustrate the need for some of these amendments, because basically we do need to be pushing far more in some of the areas, especially delivery of the homes that we need for our communities. Just a note to Councillor Meredith, MPH is no longer responsible for the delivery of housing. It's now in-house at WNC. Thank you for all their comments, and I look forward to seeing the administration implement some of them by the back door.
Thank you. I will now ask Councillor Malcolm Longley to reply to the debate on the amendments. 2 minutes.
Yep, thank you very much for those. Very interesting comments. The couple of things I'd say to Keith first. I'm bound to say it. I was dying to say it. Don't confuse contingency with reserves. All right, quite different. Quite different. Reserves haven't budged. In fact, they've gone up. Contingencies, you put them in there for the very purposes that and we've done it again this coming year for incredibly obvious reasons. Okay, so but thanks all for that. And the other point I'd make to you, Keith, is that over the last 4 years, the productivity improvements or savings, as you will, have amounted to 115 million, and that's the level of it. And it's got to go on like that in future years. I mean, you'd be, I anticipate, involved in it in the future to a degree. And listen to me carefully here. It's important. Right, I'll go back to all the other points that came up. The comeback on the Labour amendments is a matter of nuance, really, not don't want to increase the money in the budget, don't think it's necessary. Some of the ideas, as I've already alluded to, fine, you know, no problem with the ideas, like good ideas, but it doesn't need an increased budget to do it. What it needs is an allocation, and that will put some power behind. So thank you, Chair. That's all I need to say, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. There will now be a recorded vote on each amendment, and I will ask the Democratic Services Manager to take the vote.
Thank you, Chair. So we just started the vote on Labour Amendment 1.
But nobody said you've got to press the button to start it and click login.
Labour group amendments against, isn't it? Oh well. Change it. I did.
She asked for first Labour amendment.
Yeah.
That's Malcolm. Yeah. So that's
Andre, what are we voting for or against? No, she said Amendment 1. She said against for Labour. What are we doing?
Oh, right.
No. Okay, thank you. It's not clear on here what's going on.
Let's stop that one then.
Go on, being silly.
We're all good, yeah.
Thank you. Labour Amendment 1, the scores have been taken off my screen.
Sorry. It was defeated.
It was defeated. Labour Amendment 2. Okay. That too is defeated. Labour Amendment 3. Okay. Yeah. Shall I announce? Yes, I'll get the Democratic Service Manager to read out the results.
So that was defeated 46 votes to 16. We'll move on to Amendment 4. Okay, Chair?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll stop that one. That was defeated 38 votes to 21 with 1 abstention. We'll move on to Amendment 5. Okay. That was defeated 44 votes to 21. We'll move on to Amendment 6. Okay. That was defeated 44 votes to 22. We'll move on to Amendment 7. That's defeated 49 votes to 14. And we'll move on to Amendment 8, which is the final amendment. Okay. And that one was defeated 45 votes to 20. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to step 3, the Liberal Democratic Group amendment, and I'll invite Councillor Jonathan Harris to propose the amendments on behalf of the Liberal Democratic Group. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to start by thanking Martin, James and the finance team, along with other officers who have provided contributions to these proposals. The specific detail is contained within our amendment document. I'm simply going to provide some broad context for each of the proposals. On the first two, proposals 1 and 2, we need a robust and sustainable local plan. It will now have a lifespan to 2043 and is one of the major tools that the Council has that can help us move forward to our net zero target of 2045 and the 2050 national legal limit. This Council must establish policy standards which push boundaries. With, in effect, the revival of the Oxford-Cambridge arc, it means that we must get our act together. The majority of us who have spent time on planning committees are entirely fed up with warehouses without photovoltaics, or PVs, I'll refer to them from now on. Of course, this is a building regulations issue as well as a local planning issue. And increasingly, residents have concerns with the creation of solar farms on agricultural land. A general principle of using buildings, not fields, for PVs should apply. Arguments about weight on roofs is a red herring, although I acknowledge we still do have issues about grid connections. However, there will be circumstances where solar farms may be the right option, and in these circumstances, we believe that we should have strong policies on land use with solar. Policies that not only encourage grazing, but also allow the growing of food, known as agrovoltaics. I have a good deal of respect for our planning policy officer colleagues. However, we believe our proposal of introducing an independent perspective will add value. Linked to the previous proposal, we believe that there are opportunities for the use of photovoltaics also on open car parks, including those owned by West Northants Council. I chaired a task and finish group on scrutiny, and Councillor McCord referred to this earlier on. But if there is a detailed plan, I haven't seen it, and neither has the Sustainability Group, and neither has the Scrutiny Committee. So if it exists, it must be locked in a secret safe cupboard somewhere. This policy approach further presents an opportunity to avoid or reduce the use of agricultural land for solar, and could accelerate our own energy creation. We suggest exploring further partnerships for energy creation. For example, Silverstone is increasingly common in continental Europe to find similar schemes at race circuits where there are wide open car parking spaces. The third proposal is around improved life chances. Tragically, just over a year ago, a young sixth form student in my ward took their own life. We have had many discussions with their mum, both with our Director of Public Health, officers developing and implementing the suicide prevention strategy, and with the school safeguarding team. One of the challenges we currently face is the guidelines, Keeping Children Safe in Education 2024. Although they focus on mental health, they make no specific reference to suicide. We've asked the MP for Daventry to write to the Education Secretary to request a change to these guidelines. We are still waiting for a response to his request, which he has made. In the meantime, we believe there are further opportunities to bolster safeguarding activity and education related to this serious issue. We know there are still delays in accessing prompt and timely mental health services, but we could strengthen our interactions within schools and colleges whilst we wait for amendments to the guidelines. This is no reflection on our team whatsoever. Rather, we believe that opportunities exist to provide more support. The loss of one young person is simply one too many. Proposal 4. Fellow Councillor Meredith has been extremely focused, vocal and committed to making improvements in his local area for some time. Our proposal asks for the facility in the Eastern District, the community centre, to be explicitly considered as part of the emerging family hub network. The Eastern District continues to feature on the deprivation index as one of our highest in our council area. Our request is that we invest funds to upgrade existing facilities and link this investment to the Emerging Family Hub programme. Not a million miles away, we've seen a press release that Malton is to get a new health and wellbeing centre. That's really great news for Malton, and growth in that area suggests it's needed, even though it appears that there's still no capital funding yet in place, and I understand that the NHS have yet to identify the kind of facility they actually want. But apparently Section 106 funding will be used. Now, in an area such as the Eastern District, they can't rely on funds from 106, as it was built out many years ago. It also appears that there has been no funding set aside for ongoing maintenance and development as this area matures. Our view is that locating a family hub in this area could have a really positive outcome within this community. Proposal 5. We're now seeing the true impact of something I saw referred to last week, perhaps aptly, as Thatcher's time bomb. The full impact of the right to buy is leaving many councils with huge shortfalls in and ongoing challenges with social housing, all of which lead to ever-increasing waiting lists. The council's own performance has been abysmal. Can't use any other word, with just 7 social houses built in the first half of this year. Capital projects are well behind, and of course there are performance issues relating to MPH. A decent home should be a right for all. Everyone should have the chance to buy an affordable home. However, the decision to allow the mass sell-off for social housing with heavy discounts, the government keeping most of the cash raised, and failing to put in place a compulsory replacement programme was at best short-sighted and at worst irresponsible. We all know that capital isn't free, but we do have choices about how we spend it. The administration can find 15 million for a so-called relief road, which is really an access road to new houses. We can find £4 million to top up funding for the Market Square. We can even find £10 million to fix potholes in an election year. Choices. Therefore, we ask the administration to consider additional capital to enable this council to acquire properties to speed up the process of adding homes to our portfolio. Proposal 6. Another area of opportunity is support for the strategic focus on thriving villages and towns. Northampton has benefited from millions of pounds of grant funding from various government schemes and sources. I read with interest today that this council is now apparently developing a 15-year master plan for the town. That's great, but it does lead me to wonder if we've been putting the cart before the horse. There is a growing perception, rightly or wrongly, that the focus is on the council's largest town and not equally on our market towns, primary service villages and rural areas. Outside of Northampton, we have many areas with closed retail units which sit empty for many years. This proposal is linked to the letting of vacant units legislation, which will result in some form of auction to force landlords to get empty units back online. We simply request that funds are utilised to incentivise start-up businesses in these areas to make it easier for them to get a good start. Proposal 7. This is an area we've talked about before. We have a beautiful county with wonderful locations and should be using this to our full advantage. The economic growth strategy refers to sector investment for creative and digital. That's precisely what this proposal sets out to do. Create a feasibility study to explore what opportunities exist to create or produce and set up facilities, including potentially using some of our existing facilities that we have ourselves, like empty courtrooms. This isn't tourism, it's about actually developing production facilities in an industry that has huge potential. We are geographically well placed for this type of scheme, and there are some proposals in other areas that are meeting challenges. So why don't we take up the mantle and encourage them to come here instead? Proposal 8. The median full-time salary in West Northamptonshire is £37,200 for a man and £31,800 for a woman. A councillor's basic allowance is £16,053. Special responsibility allowances doubles that to £32,106. That's more than the full-time median salary for a woman in West Northants. So we simply question how appropriate is this. We're not suggesting there should be no SRAs for chairs, but the allowance could be and should be more proportionate. We fully understand that this proposal is subject to comment by the IPR panel. However, we can make a choice now to put forward this recommendation. Remember, they recommend, but we decide. This proposal would then also put money back into the revenue account and allows us to restore the proposed £30,000 cut in grant funding to the Royal and Derngate. Now, in my opinion, the Royal and Derngate is a jewel in the crown for Northampton and West Northamptonshire.
Councillor Harris, your 10 minutes is up.
Thank you. I'll just sum up if I may. I close by reminding councillors that these amendments have had due process applied, with comment being sought from Section 151 and the monitoring officer. There are alternative ideas and have all been deemed viable. You paid your money, you take your choice. I ask that you support these proposals and fully consider them.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. I will now invite Councillor Carl Squires to second the amendment. Councillor Randall, are you seconding the amendment now, or is Councillor... Could you turn your mic off, please, Councillor Randall? Councillor Carl Squires, I call upon you to second the amendment.
Thank you, Chair. Pleased to second this, and I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. I'll now take Councillor Wendy Randall.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to run through some of it, and Councillor Purser will run through the others. So, Amendment 1, the Labour Group have no issue with Amendment 1, so we will be voting for. Amendment 2, there are some good parts in that, but we feel that there needs to be a car park strategy on all of our car parks. We've got car parks that are, being closed, so we will be abstaining on Amendment 2. On Amendment 3, we wholeheartedly support this amendment, and I'm sure it will be welcomed by schools, and it really, really is needed. So we will be voting for that amendment. On Amendment 4, yes, I understand about the family hub in that area, but we were really disappointed that we're only getting 4 in-person family hubs. There are many areas where there is truly needed. We have lots of deprived and needed areas, so we will be abstaining on that because we feel that there really needs to be a feasibility study carried out to see exactly what areas have the greatest need. And Councillor Purser will speak on 5, 6 and 7, and on Amendment 8, wholeheartedly agree with Amendment 8. The public are often saying, what do we do for the money? A lot of these chairs don't meet very often. To get a huge extra allowance, to me, is a discredit to the public, so we will be voting for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. Councillor Meredith.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'd just like to speak on Amendment 4, that my group considered all my comments that I made, and I appeal to the administration to make me happy when I leave this council next May, that you accept this amendment. Councillor Randall stated that she wants to do a feasibility study. Well, I'm going to tell her where the most deprived area is. The most deprived area in Northampton, whether people like it or not, is Goldings and Southfields. They're the 2 most deprived areas. They need a new community hub urgently. Now, I've been going on about this for ages and ages, and nothing has happened. And we are, over the eastern side of the town, we are the most, that we don't get the money what that we should. It's not even taken into consideration. And I've said this many, many times before. If I was in a rural area, we would have got this community hub without any problem at all. So I say to the administration, look, this is simple to find, get the money, make me happy, and when I go out to this council, I can say, well, the administration has come up with something that I really wanted. So don't vote against this, please. I appeal to you on behalf of the residents, and I appeal to you particularly on behalf of the elderly people. Lots of elderly people are isolated in that particular area because the community centre which we have is absolutely appalling. It's actually falling down. Now, some of the councillors on the administration come to have a look, and they agreed with me, and they said they would help.
Councillor
but what have they
Meredith,
done? They have done nothing.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll spin through the proposals in turn on the agrivoltaics and the proposal to employ an independent sustainability expert. Planning will, will consult as needed and gain the advice that it needs to put together the local plan. We can't support that one. I don't think £100,000 represents good value for money just to develop a partnership group for businesses and explore photovoltaics on private land. Item 3 is an interesting one, and we need to approach it with some sensitivity because of the issues involved. Now, last week at Cabinet, we approved a 0 to 19 health visiting and school nursing service that has an annual budget of £7 million, and it has provision for mental health support both in primary schools and secondary schools. We believe that that's sufficient. However, we're more than open to a conversation as we see that service getting on its feet as to whether it is in practice sufficient and whether schools need further support further down the line. So more than happy to have that discussion if we're both or all in our places in the weeks and months to come. On the Eastern District hub, poor Dennis. He's been making the case for £1 million for Talavera for years, and his group's only prepared to give him half. Only £500,000. But the biggest downfall with this is that there's no revenue costs attached. There's no provision for the revenue required to actually run the hub. However, good news for Councillor Meredith. Within the project exploring future family hubs, there is a need identified in the Eastern District. We will be pursuing a family hub in that part of Northampton. So I'll get officers to give him more details about specific locations and what have you. Unfortunately, the government didn't give West Northamptonshire any money for family hubs, so we're having to use our own funds for that, but we will be. Well, they may not like it, but it's true. We didn't get any money for family hubs from the government.
Councillor Brown, your 2 minutes are up. Okay.
Social housing use, case-by-case basis, happy to explore that.
Councillor Brown,
we've already said with the IRP will make the decision about allowances. That's a debate for the annual meeting. Sorry, Chair.
Thank you. Could we go to Councillor Purser, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to deal with 5, 6 and 7. Buying back houses, yes, is a good idea. The location needs to be right. We need to be careful there are not perverse incentives and we don't disrupt the local market and put our own residents at a disadvantage. So that's a very delicate one. I'd rather put our energy into building social housing. That would where I'd put my money if I had that chance. The small business units is a very strange proposal. Low evidence of need, no business case. I think it's an area actually the private sector deals with much better than a local authority in this case. Then the support to the film and TV industry sounds a good idea, except that we've already got Screen Northants operating in the area. We've got AR Media, which I know about, who seem to be an excellent organisation. I think we've really already got that organisation going. My daughter did some work experience with both of those, really put her on a very firm footing for a media career. So I think we should support our existing initiatives and companies rather than set up something else. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Purser. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to speak on Amendment 6, which relates directly to the Council's corporate priority to support thriving villages and towns. This proposal certainly wouldn't be proposed without evidence of need, and each proposal will need to be supported by a business case. By offering additional support to businesses in rural areas and our market towns, this would help boost the local economy and demonstrate that we really are one Northamptonshire, as our latest vision for 2030 is described, not just Northampton plus the villages and the market towns, town versus countryside, where neither side understands the other. The 60 million funding that's come Northampton's way via the Levelling Up and Towns funds has no relevance for Daventry residents, for example, who see their valued open space on Eastern Way at risk of being sold for development in order for improvements to their hometown. Funding of 1 million from either a revenue contingency fund or repurposing existing reserves to fund as a one-off time-limited expenditure to make available empty premises in our primary service villages and market towns is surely an entirely reasonable proposal which should be supported. This proposal is not about purchasing commercial properties, but being able to offer grants and supports to get into units and to start businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Councillor McCord, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I know the Liberal Democrats are proud of their green credentials, but recycling proposals like their film and film set ideas just shows how little scope we have. And it's great to see that they now support me with their support for the market towns, highlighting the Northampton bias that this council has demonstrated to date. Is there an election coming, Jonathan? Now, if I have to declare an interest in their IRP idea, I will do it now. I've written to the monitoring officer about the allowances proposals, and I believe they are out of order and unlawful, as it needs to be put before an independent remuneration panel proposal. The IRP is deliberating now, and we have no proposal tonight. I've not moved a point of order because I've had email exchange with the MO setting out her position. And I want to also thank the Liberal Democrats for their child suicide issues that they've raised. I agree with that, and we can debate how it should be funded, but it's certainly right that the issue is being highlighted. The solar proposals I can agree with. Putting solar panels on the roofs of warehouses and new build is sensible. But I've been having similar arguments with others on solar in fields, notably like the leader of the independent group at the LGA. These are merely a symptom of the problem, and the problem is the daft commitment to net zero. You cannot be an evangelist for net zero and then decry the projects to bring it about. We need to get to the root of the problem, the drivers of the policy that are the net zero targets. And if you end all that nonsense, all this falls away. And I just cannot understand why, not just Jonathan and his friends beside me here, but cannot draw the straight line between the stupid 1,000-hectare solar farms and net zero. I say treat the cause, not the symptoms. So I did support every one of the Labour amendments. I got cut off before I said I commended that to the thing, but I won't be surprised. I'll support some of these, but not all of them.
Thank you, Councillor McCord. I will now go back to Councillor Carl Squires, who reserved his right to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we look forward to the family hub in the Eastern District. I'm not saying we should call it the Meredith Centre. Of course, we will provide business cases for our proposals. That goes as read. And we welcome the inclusion of the school safeguarding in the 0 to 19 plan. We think that's a good idea. It came to Cabinet, we supported it there, and inclusion would be very good. Now, these are sensible proposals that have been run past the finance team, have been fully costed. This shows we are fair, pragmatic and competent. These are proposals that give a fair deal to our residents and will make a difference to their lives and the community. But we also need to show our part in the process. And I hear what you say about independent panels, but we shouldn't hide behind these independent panels, and a reduction in some of our allowances do just that. There's nothing wrong with us in recommending to the independent panels. If the Council chooses not to approve our proposals, then this is purely political. It's not financial. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will now go back to Councillor Harris to respond to the debate.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments, if I may. Obviously, I welcome the comments that have been made across the floor from various different people. Particularly welcome your comments, Councillor Brown, on a couple of those really important key ideas. And as you say, the dependent factor is whether you and I are here to get the opportunity to talk about it, but let's hope that's the case to progress some of those. A couple of things to Councillor Purser. Councillor Purser, come and visit the rural areas sometimes, and you might realise that there is a life outside of the town, and there are units that have sit vacant for many months and many years in some instances. And our proposal is simply to stimulate the opportunity to get those back in use, and it's actually linked to the letting of vacant units, which is Labour legislation. So, it actually should be seen as quite a positive thing, I would have thought. Councillor McCord and I have had the debate and the discussion about the recommendations in item 8, and as I said to him at the time, and I will say it again now, I take my guidance from the monitoring officer. That's the reason why these proposals are here. You can argue whether they should or shouldn't be. The guidance has come from the monitoring officer. On the recycling point about TV and film proposal, yeah, sometimes it's a good idea to keep bashing on about something if you think there's some merit in it. And I seem to remember Councillor McCord being pretty supportive of that proposal last time. So it's a shame that he doesn't feel quite so positive this time round, maybe. And on the final point I want to make on solar, at no point have I said I'm anti-solar farms. And most of you in this chamber will know my very passionate credentials for the net zero agenda. Remember, everybody, it's legislation currently. That's the point. 2050, we're going slightly earlier, but actually it's legislation. It's not mine. It was a Conservative government's legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. I will now ask Councillor Longley to reply to the debate on the amendments.
Thank you, Chair. Again, another swift one, because this is... I went through all the items before, and it's a combination, really, of business plans or allocation again. Same as it was in Labour, and so I think I'd prefer back to say, let's look at business plans, let's look at allocation. In particular, the one on the, I did mention the green approach on the PVs, well, and I strongly recommend that Jonathan gets involved and understands it well, and I'm very, very pleased to walk him through it. There's a good programme there. So there's no need to say any more, I don't think, Chair. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. There will now be a recorded vote on each amendment, and I will ask the Democratic Service Manager to take the votes and announce the results.
Thank you, Chairman. We'll start the vote on Amendment 1. That's defeated 46 votes to 20. We'll start the vote on Amendment 2 now. Okay. That's defeated 44 votes to 9 with 12 abstentions. We'll start the vote on Amendment 3. That's defeated 38 votes to 23 with 5 abstentions. We'll start the vote on Amendment 4. Okay. That's defeated 43 votes to 8 with 14 abstentions. We'll start the vote on Amendment 5. That's defeated 45 votes to 20. Amendment 6 now. That's defeated 56 votes to 9 with 1 abstention. Amendment 7. That's defeated 44 votes to 7 with 14 abstentions. And the final amendment, Amendment 8. Okay. That's defeated 42 votes to 22 with 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you. We've now been sitting for 2 hours, so I'm proposing a break at this point, and could we all return in 15 minutes' time at 7:20? Thank you. Seats. We're on item 6 of the agenda, working through step 3, and we're now at the part where we take the independent group statement. I will invite Councillor Ian McCord to make a statement on behalf of the independent group. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Can I first begin with a word of thanks to Martin, Malcolm and all those members, both in the administration and the opposition, who have helped to get to the budget this far. Now, having seen the Labour and the Liberal Democrat amendments to the budget, I'm more convinced of my own decision not to present one. I could spend many hours to draw up an alternative budget. It would be a monumental waste of time to have it dismissed in a few minutes. But more to the point, as the others have just demonstrated, the scope to make change is very limited. It will always be constrained while so much of our budgets are spent delivering statutory services only. There is little discretionary spend, and that will remain the case until we have a reform of care. I could have tried to strike out the silly spending on net zero, but it's very hard to actually identify, and it is close to net £0. As the Scrutiny Committee identified, there is not a pot of cash with a label on it for this policy, and it lacks an objective focus. There is some spending, but in reality it's a slogan and should either be properly funded or dropped. Madam Chairman, those who follow the development and changes to the budget will have noticed that we had a near miss between draft and final budget. We put £5 million cost saving into the draft to be realised by the application of artificial intelligence by the Council. Now, there are some areas of the Council, Planning Department for example, where any intelligence applied, artificial or otherwise, would be very welcome. But we can use this technology for better outcomes. If we can process, say, EHCPs or benefits claims faster, that is certainly to be encouraged. And I think we may have confused cost avoidance and increased productivity for cashable and hard savings. But this was a near miss, as there was an upside on what came from government, which balanced it out. And that upside has been there for most years, and it's due mostly to the prudent forecasting from Martin and his team. It's not unusual this year that there was a small surplus. Within the many pages of detail that form the budget, there are a few lines worthy of comment. I note the cost of removing the political assistance, the cost saving. Since 2021, this Council has spent £286,000 to benefit just the Conservative and Labour groups, and I hope our Council taxpayers consider that good value for money. I've expressed concern about the Children's Trust budget, that the overspend is not accounted for or fully corrected. The last reported figure showed the Trust was likely to be overspent by £10 million, and this budget changes the Trust figure from 94.5 to 96.1, an increase of 1.6. I'm told there's a programme of savings that will mitigate the rest, but history doesn't give me confidence that that will happen, and I worry that we'll have a pressure from day one. And I think we should also look at the income side of things. And another line that caught my eye, the Rural Services Delivery Grant has been abolished. It's a fact that, for example, bins which are a quarter of a mile apart are more expensive per unit to empty than those in more densely populated towns. And the new government doesn't understand the rural areas, but these are real costs, which was recognised with that grant. Now, we all understand that here in WNC, the needs of Northampton stand above all else. And I fear that this wrong-headed cross-policy party choice will now be reinforced by the financial driver as well. I would also point members to look at the use of reserves on page 48. A year ago, we had 104 million. We're projecting to be at 96 million in 6 weeks' time. But in a year from now, we estimate the reserves to be 82 million. Now, it's still a relatively healthy level of reserves and is covered by the statement from Chief Finance Officer, but members should begin to think about, do we need to slow the speed at which we're using all of those reserves? They can only be spent once. So that all, for the time being, is all I wish to say at this stage. I might speak in the substantive debate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We're now at step 4, statements from non-aligned councillors. Are there any non-aligned councillors who wish to make a statement? No. Step 5. We're now at the part where we debate the substantive budget that's been proposed. Are there any members of the Council who wish to comment on the substantive budget? Councillor Bearsworth, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very, very disappointed that we're going into an election year, and yet we've built so few council properties. We've lost I think it's over 13 or 14,000 properties through the right to buy. And I know it's not as popular with the councillors as it is with people, because we just haven't got enough houses to accommodate people. We've got hundreds of people in temporary accommodation, children being brought up in hotels. It's totally and absolutely wrong in this day and age. We should be doing more to get houses built, and this is why we wanted to put the extra 20 million in to buy homes now. It takes too long to build them, so let's get some homes built now for people to move into, to get a home, a front door of their own. Home is the most important thing for a child to be raised in. We had a gentleman speaking tonight about children are our future. They are, but they need homes. And I just can't believe that this council has built so few. We used to have an empty homes officer, which was really good, because if we had an empty home, we could find out who owned it, and we could actually find out who could get it, and we also bring them back into use. Not all of them, but some of them. But it's just a shame. Housing to me is the most important thing that this council does, to provide homes for people. And I think this administration has dragged its feet on that. We were talking about modular homes, that they haven't come into being. They're still being talked about which ones to use, when we've got people struggling to come out of private accommodation because they can't afford the rents that the private landlords are charging. It's an awful situation. I really, really wish that this council could do more in actually providing
Beadsworth, your 2 minutes is up.
I will sum up by saying tonight's BAFTA must go to Councillor Ian McCord for his speaking lessons he's going to give us all on
Councillor
speed speaking.
Beadsworth, your 2
Thank you.
minutes are up. Thank you. Councillor Squires.
Thank you, Chair. Over the last 4 years of this council, we've had COVID funding. We've raised over 600 million of additional funding through council tax increases. And yet, to balance the books, we're regularly using contingency funds, and yes, I know what contingency funds are about. However, services are not getting noticeably better. The question is, has this extra money actually masked the key underlying issues that really we should be addressing now? Is this going to be the year of reckoning when reality actually hits us hard, and we're going to have to do something drastic to ensure we don't end up in the same situation as the County Council? I raised the medium-term forecast in Cabinet. The answer I got from Councillor Langley seemed to imply that a forecast is a forecast and, okay, can be largely ignored. And ideally, he would have liked to have raised council tax by more than a 4.9%. But surely the deficit of 26 million in not 2026-27 should be concerning for us all. I know Councillor Langley said it's going to be a bit tricky. I was going to say, will we be standing here? But actually, will some of us be standing here in 12 months' time saying to ourselves, we've got a problem? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jolly.
Thank you, Chair. The budget outlines almost 6 million increases in charges and fees to our residents. These increases include £2 increase in green waste collection, raising 170k, raising 125k through increasing the amount of people getting a parking ticket, introducing a parking charges to Sixfield Reservoir and the racecourse, which will discourage people from visiting our green spaces, all for 26k this year and just 4k the following year. Even charging people who lose their bus pass to get a new one, 8k that will bring in. A simple inspection fee for a new house is increasing by £75, whilst building notices going to cost the customer £115 more. So it's going to cost residents more to get rid of their rubbish, more if they want to pop into the shop in town, more if they want to visit our parks, more if they accidentally lose their bus pass. Once again, it's our residents who are paying for this administration's poor financial planning. Residents of WNC are paying for more and getting less. What next? What would you be charging them for? The air that they breathe?
Councillor Bob Purser. Excuse me, Councillor Purser, I'm afraid you pressed your button, so if you press it again, you'll go back into the queue. Can I call on Councillor Hack, please?
Thank you, Chair. Medium-term financial plan. I want to raise our group's concern about the medium-term financial plan. The draft reports clearly state the Council has considerable uncertainty in the medium-term plan, and we are already looking at a budget gap of 26 million for 2026 and 2027, which will have to be filled somehow. I hope this Council join us in welcoming the new Labour government's multi-year financial settlement from next year, as outlined in English Devolution White Paper. This will give us the certainty we need to plan ahead and commission the long-term, cost-effective contract for vital services. We can't keep guessing how the Council is going to fund ourselves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Another budget, another year that we ask our residents for more, but give them a less service. 4 years that pretty much when you speak to residents, or certainly when I do, they're saying cost of living crisis, but you're charging us more for services. Over the past 4 years, families in an average Band D property have seen their council tax increase by £300 a year. The amount of income WNC receives via council tax increased by almost £50 million since 2021. Yet, every single budget since I've been a member of this council has depended on the use of contingencies, brackets, I know what you're going to say, Malcolm, to the last year. We've burnt through 45% of our £170 million reserves in just 4 years. Currently, over 4,000 households on our social housing waiting list. Not even half of the 500 social homes promised in 21 have been delivered. We pay £30 million a year for Kia to maintain our roads, yet they are amongst the most dangerous in England. In 2022, we topped the East Midlands for the highest number of emergency food parcels delivered to families. We're in 2025 in an advanced democracy where residents are people, and they're people that put us here, and we're in a position of responsibility. I'll just repeat that. In 2022, we topped the East Midlands for the highest number of emergency food parcels delivered to families. We talk about legacy, we talk about history. The legacy of that will last for far too long in West Northamptonshire.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Stone. Councillor Barrett, can you switch your mic off, please? Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Longley, I don't believe the fiction that is your budget. I would like to say I would give 10 out of 10 to the officers and the directors of services for helping you produce the budget, but I'll give you and your administration 0 out of 10. I don't think you're being straight with us. I can see quite clearly in the budget how fragile it is. And I would predict that if we carry on the way we are, that within 2 years, we will be served with a 114 notice, as was the county. Your budget is built on productivity. Do you mean redundancies? Do you mean vacancies? Do you mean savings that are not deliverable within the year? This is an extremely fragile budget. Not only is it fragile, but it is not delivering, and it can't deliver to the people in West Northants. And if you look at page 169, the fiction that are the 6 priorities, we've had 6 years to deliver against some of those priorities. We've had 4 years where they've been agreed council policy. There isn't a single priority that is being delivered against. In fact, we have asked for things like the anti-poverty strategy, to be considered with all the decision-making of this council. Your budget, Councillor Longley, the administration's budget is going to increase poverty. If you throw people out of work, if you create vacancies, what you're not doing is supporting the local economy. If you outsource services and put public funds into private pockets, you are not looking after the local economy. We have asked you time and time again to tell us where our money, where the public's money ends up.
Councillor Stone, your 2 minutes
Which
is up.
offshore accounts are they going into?
Councillor Stone.
It's this administration that has weakened the
Councillor
local
Stone,
economy.
your 2 minutes are up. Thank you. Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Chair. When you read through this budget, it's pretty much the same as we read through every year, and every year I keep saying it's the same old. I don't see that we are doing anything different here than what we did last year or what we did the year before. And all we see is costs going up and the residents asked to pay extra to cover those costs. We need to start looking outside the box. My group have been travelling around the country, visiting other councils to see what they're doing differently. And boy, they are doing a hell of a lot more than what we are. Only yesterday I was looking at Basildon. Take a look at them. Take a look at what their budget is, because they have done amazing things in a year. They are building council homes. They've built 100 council homes just in this last year. We have got over 4,500 people that should be on our housing list that aren't yet, because we haven't got the capacity to get them back onto that list. But I am frequently getting emails from residents to say, you know, when is the housing, when am I going to get back on that housing list? I'm desperate, I'm sofa surfing, or I've got nowhere to live. Temporary accommodation is costing us huge amounts of money, but we're not doing anything different. We have put forward a numerous amount of motions to try to help you think of things, ways of doing things differently, and nothing. You've only got to look down our neighbours in Milton Keynes. They still have weekly waste collection. And I've said, how do you manage that? And they have free garden waste. How do you manage that? Well, we have a recycling bin just for cut dry cardboard. Dry cardboard fetches a phenomenal amount of money. And not that we need to go back to weekly bin collections, but I'm just saying, by doing things differently, you know, you can do things differently. We haven't got to keep doing the same old. We've got more and more children coming into care, and the prevention is just not been there. We've spoken about family hubs for the last 2 years, and we still haven't got the first one opened. We need to do things differently. Vote Labour, vote change.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. Thank you. Councillor Al-Wahabi.
Chair, I cannot vote for this budget. I'll talk about the infrastructure and reserve. Building the infrastructure to support our services and support our communities is our bread and butter. We need good connectivity, integrated systems, and an IT architecture that meets the present and the future needs. We need our own in-house expert to provide the digital infrastructure that we need. We need to avoid really expensive consultants who do the job and go. We need to avoid contracts that ties us into systems that cannot speak to each other and become obsolete. I'm shocked that we have made 20 IT staff redundant and that you are proposing to remove funding from data architecture. We have massive potholes on our roads. We have massive potholes in our digital highways. Effective and efficient IT systems help customer services and help make our frontline services effective and responsive to changing needs. We need to put the public and our services at the heart of what we do. This budget does not do that. In reserve, in year 2025 to 26, budget expected to use up almost £13.5 million of our reserves. Over £5 million more than current financial year of £8.1 million. The amount of the reserve expected to be used is increased by almost £1.5 million between the draft budget and the final budget. worrying to see the risk reserve originally set at £711,000 plumbed to just £154,000. This is not a large reserve concerning we have
Councillor
spent
Al-Wabi, your 2 minutes are up.
I'll just sum it if you don't mind. Set up the biggest of our reserve in the budget since 2022 to 23, when we used up enormously £36 million.
Thank you, Councillor Al-Wahabi.
Thanks.
Could you turn your mic off, please, Councillor? Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. I have searched the budget and I'm quite horrified what I found. We have a marvellous facility in Northampton, which every single one of you here should support. Going back to the Derngate, when I was first elected councillor, we used to give the Derngate £1.5 million subsidy. And they used to be able to do really good plays and varieties and everything. And then it is a facility which people use from all over the country. They come to it, and we should be very proud in Northampton. And now I read in the budget, we are cutting £30,000 from their budget, and we only give them £300,000 subsidy. And that is not enough. It's really not enough. Every year you pick on the Derngate. Every single year you come and say, we're cutting the budget. I'm going to say this to you. If you're not careful, we are going to lose the Derngate. And that is a fact. That is a fact. The Art Council have cut all their budgets, so they're having to put on plays on a shoestring. And this council has taken the decision to cut £30,000 from their budget. It's not acceptable. So I would suggest to you that you do something about it, because it's our wonderful facility, and it's really, people love it in Northampton. They love to go to the plays and to see different things. Please, you can't keep cutting the budget from Derngate, because it will not exist. I'm sorry, it will not exist.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Councillor Irving Swift.
Thank you. It's for a little thing. In the budget, you have something about the Brampton Valley Way. And I would invite everybody to come, because, as I said, our ward, the ward I represent with 2 other councillors, is wonderful. But more important, all the people of Northampton will be able now to go from Northampton to Market Harborough when the town hall are in their bicycle or walking, and they can see where Peaky Blender was filmed. They can go and see the Gnome of Lamport, or visit the wonderful Kelmarsh Hall, where you have the kitchen facilities. So thank you so much. It took me 12 years to have that. And I think if you have a good plan, and if you carry on and saying that the Brampton Valley Way is a gem, it will be a discovered gem, I hope, by you all. And it will be net zero, because you will take your bicycle to visit. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the team to have put that little line on the budget. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Sue Sharps.
Thank you, Chair. I think before we go applauding this new budget, we need to look at our current accounts. We're currently set to overspend by 5 million, which is a little over a month ago until we have the financial end. This is a pretty terrible state of affairs. We're overspending by 9 million in adult social care, and that's nothing anyone in this room wants to do. 1.3 in temporary accommodation. Again, nobody in this room wants to do that. And 7 million in the Children's Trust. And I can assure you no councillor wishes to do that. Worst is 800k overspend in getting external contractors to fill our flood team, because we can't get our staff. As a result of this, all non-critical spending has been halted. All recruitment has been stopped alongside all agency spend, and managers have been told to delay all unavoidable spending until March. To make the books balance. Well, you can make what you like of that. I know what I'm making of it. I can only guess what effects these tactics will have on our services long term. As you can understand, this doesn't fill me or many of our residents or Labour or the public with much hope of this budget. How can we be assured this won't go the same way? I'm struggling to find anything to suggest that you're changing anything you've done so far or that we will in the future. It seems to me like you're sleepwalking, that old phrase, but it seems like a good phrase, sleepwalking along with the public's money. So I'm afraid I'm not going to support this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Sharps. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I'll try and whistle through a few of the comments that have been made so far. We had complaints about fees and charges, but notably no amendment from Labour to the schedules of fees and charges. Concerns raised about the mid-term financial strategy. We were asked to welcome the multi-year settlement. Well, I welcome the principle of a multi-year settlement. I think we need to wait for the detail and to see how much money is coming to West Northamptonshire before we welcome any multi-year settlement. Complaints about council tax and contingencies from Councillor Barrett. You know, it's quite easily identifiable from the budget that council tax is a key source of income. Without that income, the only choice we would have would be horrendous service cuts. And contingencies, Councillor Barrett knows the answer to that already. They're in there to be spent as and when it's necessary. They've been criticised in the past unfairly by Labour, but I think it's been demonstrated just how necessary they are. Councillor Stone made some comments. A work of fiction, I think that is a horrendous slight on the professional integrity of our officers. And I think actually, given her prominent public role, she should apologise for that in public to our officers who have worked so hard on this budget. They put their professional integrity behind this budget, especially our Section 151 officer, and they do not deserve that kind of slander. Councillor Randall has said that she's been travelling around the country taking lessons. I know that she was in Birmingham not so long ago. Yes, they do things differently there. 7.5% council tax rise, 114 notices, bin strikes, chaos galore, not the kind of lessons we need in West Northamptonshire. Councillor Meredith says that we've been after the Durngate every single year. This is the first year that the Durngate subsidy has been reduced. It wasn't done lightly. We love the Durngate ourselves. We'll continue to support them as much as we can within our budget. And Councillor Sharps, just to round off, actually identifies what the issue is, even if inadvertently. It's the demand-led services where the real pressures are coming from. We are investing heavily in preventative work. We'll continue to do so. But thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Purser.
I'm not touching anything. As Councillor Longley acknowledged, we've got an improved settlement from government, central government. And let's be clear that the new Labour government is good for local government. We would have expected a 2.5% cut had a Tory government been elected at the last election. Instead of that, we've got an extra £18 million coming in to improve and support our local services. That's money for potholes, 3.8 million. Money for adult services, 2.5 million. Money from the new homes bonus. And what I'm really concerned about is that we're using the new homes bonus to bolster Councillor Longley's contingency fund. Now, we know Councillor Longley has an amazing pair of trousers with many, many pockets into which he puts all these contingency funds. He has contingencies to meet his contingency. He has contingency funds to meet his contingency funds. But really, from local people's point of view, what they want to see this money from the new homes bonus going towards is improved local services so that they see their streets tidied. We don't have litter, we don't have the kind of problems in some of our some of our estates. So we want to see that money not going into contingency. We need some money for contingency funds, and it's a job of a good finance director to keep as much as he can in his contingency funds. But it's the job of the other cabinet members to attend to services and make sure that we're delivering the services across the area. So that is my concern about this budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gonzalez de Savage. We will now take Councillor Matt Golby. If you press your button again, you'll go back into the queue, Councillor Gonzalez de Savage. So, Councillor Matt Golby, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I too am not going to sit here and listen to that lot talk about fiction and poor financial planning when we've got 1,500 odd budget lines and the best they can come up with is 8 suggestions. That is a huge slight on the officers of this council and the work that's gone into this budget that, as Councillor Longley mentioned earlier, started in the end of summer last year. And I also want to pay tribute to the work of Councillor Longley, not just through his time at West Northampton Council, but back in the County Council when we put everything right. We delivered balanced budgets, as we have done in this council here. And I'd also ask the Labour group to get on with fixing care. As Councillor McCord often reminds us, fix care, fix potholes. It was talked up as a part of the Labour manifesto, but unfortunately it's been kicked into the long grass and won't be reported on until 2028. So I'd urge colleagues on the other side, you lot, to speak to your MPs and ask them to get on with that. I also welcome the 3-year settlements, but again, we need to understand what's in the detail. But my point is, this is a huge amount of work. If you've got some good ideas, there were a couple, put them forward, but of course you're going to have an opinion on everything that we do, which is, I guess, part of your role. But please understand, a huge amount of work has gone into this. We deal with the options we've got in front of us. I think we've got some really good strategies and things that are going on in this council to really improve the lives of our residents across the whole part of it, whether it's our urban centres that Dennis talks about or our
Thank you,
rural
Councillor
parts.
Golby.
Thank you.
Councillor McCord.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do have to take issue with people in suggesting that Labour is good for local government. The last I saw, they wanted to abolish most of it. The people that have spoken, I must say there's much more of quality of debate. It's just a shame that some of these ideas that are being put forward for alternatives were not put forward in a coherent and cohesive alternative budget. At least then you could grapple with not just moving £1.1 million out of 956 million. That's just fiddling at the edges. But you are quite right. And yes, you're all stealing my lines. But if you want to do it, fix care, fix potholes. Fix care, you can build council homes. Fix care, and you can increase leisure provision. Fix care, and you can have as many theatres as you want, Dennis. That's the problem. And I'll keep saying it. But my concern with this budget, there's a massive risk with it. I think it's actually the riskiest budget that we've ever put forward here. And that's because of the increase in the NI. And it's not the proposal to go from 13.2 to 15. It's actually the proposal to go the minimum from 9 to 5,000. That is the problem. A lot of people, particularly in the care side, work part-time. They're probably outside of the scope, or the vast majority of their salary is outside of the scope of NI. And now it will be in. And I know we've had some money from government in this merry-go-round where it comes from London to Northampton to go back to London. But we have an absurd situation where a waste operative driving a bin lorry and toaster, directly employed, gets the NI increase picked up. The same person driving a bin lorry in Northampton doesn't. And even more absurd, it doesn't cover the Children's Trust. They've only got one customer. It's us. It's bonkers to suggest they're actually a proper private company. So I think it's a massive risk, and I think we will have a queue of people outside the door from all of our suppliers saying, we've got massive increases because of NI, and we want to see that coming back. So I'm really worried about this budget, that it will have a massive inherent risk within it that we just need to be well aware of.
Thank you, Councillor McCord. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. The Labour opposition sit there saying we don't care about our communities, etc., etc., etc. You talk about deprivation. We were all given the ability to put £2,500 per councillor into our communities through the COVID recovery grants. And you had over £13,000 left over. So in the Abington-Phipsville ward, you had £5,300 left over. Moving into Castle, you had 2,300 left over. Why? Referee Ashraf, you had to go about us not investing in our communities. You didn't spend one penny of your £2,500. You cannot budget. You do not know what you're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Baker.
Thank you. I wasn't really going to speak on this subject because it's about the budget, and I know that, children's services is always put forward as being a tricky area and overspending. We are statutorily obliged to look after children. We have some children coming into our service who are very traumatised in many ways, and the cost to look after them is very expensive. But I want to say that we've come a long way with our trust, and there's been considerable improvement in practice, performance and outcomes for our children. This is something recognised by the DfE in our recent stocktake meeting. The number of children in care is also the lowest it's been for a long time, which is a reflection of all the work that we and partners have done and what we all want. We know there is more to do, as despite all the improvements, and our costs will not have dropped as we want. But we do head into the budget setting. We know we have exciting and robust plans to tackle the biggest areas of cost pressure and high cost placements for complex children, and significant numbers of the over 17s in supported accommodation. We have put funding into that area to supply accommodation for 17 plus care leavers. That is why, in partnership with the Trust, we have 20 property projects progressing to find better solutions for accommodation for our young people at a lower cost and bring us in line with other councils. This will obviously, as my colleague mentioned, they will be affected by the NI increase because they are an independent trust and not part of the council. And just to reiterate the fact that somebody probably has mentioned already, that we have at no time had funding for family hubs. And my officers do know that I have pushed this forward very strongly right from the beginning so that we actually do have family hubs in our council.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Hallam. Councillor Hallam, I'm afraid you pressed your button. Can you press it again and we'll come back to you. Councillor James Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting this budget. I believe that despite the challenging economic landscape for local authorities, we are delivering a balanced budget tonight. And obviously, this is in stark contrast to councils who are struggling to manage their finances, many of them whom are unable to meet the basic needs of their residents and having to make special requests to government to increase their council tax by the statutory amount. This budget ensures that we can meet our statutory duties and protect essential frontline services. We're also making responsible decisions regarding council tax. Obviously, the proposed increase of 4.99 is in line with government allowable limits and ensures that we can protect services without triggering a local referendum. Let's be clear, obviously, this budget is not perfect. I think we'd all like to do more, but obviously we face limitations. Central government funding constraints, coupled with increasing demands on social care and children's service, obviously creates significant pressures, as we all know. The demand for those services continues to outstrip what is put in the budgets. The Corporate and Overview Security has noted that the challenges facing adult social care, recognising that the service regularly runs an overspend due to the volatile nature of the demand. They also acknowledge that the problems are likely to increase due to the rising number of SEND children who require complex, long-term care once they transition from adult services, as well as an ageing population. Therefore, I urge our Labour colleagues to join us in lobbying this Labour government to address the issue of adult social care head-on. As Councillor McCord has pointed out this evening, this is a national problem that requires a national solution, an urgent reform, and it will continue to have an impact on local council budgets until it is. I believe this budget is a testament to sound financial management, WNC's dedication to residents and businesses of West Northamptonshire, and our realism about the very real challenges that we face. Therefore, I really urge colleagues to support this budget tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of comments about demand-led services, which obviously are our greatest financial risk. It was released to hear from Councillor Baker that the number of children in care is the lowest number we've had. That's obviously progress, that's good news, but it's also quite, doesn't inspire confidence when Councillor Longley twice refers to the, and I don't disagree with his assessment, but that our relationship with the Children's Trust is ridiculous, or arrangement rather, in that we have all the responsibility but none of the control. So going forward, will there be any, who knows if there's going to be any adjustment to that. But as regards adult services and the cost of them, I only learned, well, we learnt recently, all those attending the Adult Scrutiny Committee in January, and this was a fact I wasn't aware of, that because of disinvestment in prevention services, historically, we actually have the highest costs of adult spending in comparison with other authorities, and out of 16 local authorities, we're the 15th in our lowest spend. So we've got the highest costs but the lowest spend. So do you have any comment on that, and how is that going to help us really reduce those costs, which I appreciate are escalating? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gonzalez de Savage, please don't press a button.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The number one priority that we all have in local government is keeping our communities safe. That has to be the top priority. And in doing so, Madam Chairman, we all know that the cost of that in delivering the statutory services is enormous. There's not one penny that's wasted or turned into a non-statutory service easily, I will tell you without a doubt. And anybody who thinks in a very comical way that identifying some really minute areas of recommendations will make massive change to our communities, they need to think again. I will say that Councillor Harry Barrett always puts forward some very interesting points. And I have to say that I do hope genuinely that central government is listening to our debate this evening and those messages go back, because Sir Keir and the Cabinet there would do very well to fund our community in a far better way than they have done so. And it has to also be said that we did fight very recently for some very logical persuasion and some very logical plans for the future in terms of devolution. None of that has yet been approved or accepted. We very much hope that it is as soon as possible. And bearing in mind that some of the partners were Labour councils, you would have really thought they would have been listening to their bosses, but quite clearly ignored them completely. Madam Chairman, I'd like to also point out that with the significant inflation and demographic pressures that we have here at West North Hants, it's hardly surprising that we can't do more. But I do welcome and support this budget, and that we have got some brilliant new technologies coming through in many areas of the council, including highway maintenance, including looking at how we actually dedicate ourselves to delivering our services. None of that should be undermined in any way whatsoever, and all of it should be encouraged. I'd like to thank Martin Henry, the entire top team, and the entire hard workers and diligent officers of the finance team who apply many, many hours of their skill right across the entirety of all the budgets. And it has to also be said that they really are the top team, and we should give them all the credit. Madam Chairman, I do support this, encourage everyone else to do so too.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, you can now press your button again. Councillor Holland Delamere.
Just to note that comments have been made about the national insurance increase and the Northamptonshire Children's Trust, which I have fed back to our colleagues in Westminster. So I have taken up that point. We're all aware of the elephant in the room. We've said it here many times. Ian always says it. It's a good line. But we also recognise how we need to be honest with our communities. We do need to be honest with our communities about the challenges that we face. We have got a fragile budget. As I've said earlier, Malcolm's tried to manage the difficult situation. We all hope for much more of this council. We all hope for much more for our communities. We do need to inspire our staff to deliver more. We need to give the tools to our staff to deliver a better service. We need to listen to the issues we've got. We sometimes talk across each other. We don't don't listen. We don't listen to our communities. I would urge everyone really to listen carefully during this time as we prepare for an election, but also to speak clearly to our communities about the challenges that we face as a community. That we have got to look out for the most vulnerable in our community. We've got to look out for them, those in care, those who are, we're corporate parents, but also, as the African proverb says, it takes a community to raise the children. We've got to invest, and I recognise what Fiona said about Councillor Baker about the hubs, and the last government, the last Conservative government, didn't give us what we wanted on that one. And we recognise that by this marriage of a wealthy South Northampton, rural Daventry, with the urban problems we've got in Northampton, we've got a challenge.
Councillor.
So we've got to be honest with our communities.
Delamere.
Honest with our communities.
Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you, Chairman. We're getting going here. You recall, Chairman, that Max Caller, who a name from the past, who wrote the report, of course, on the county council issues, said memorably that good local government is doing the boring things well. Okay? If he was in the room, he would ask for the evidence of how we've been doing. I'll just give you these 3 bits of evidence. The first year, when we really had no idea with any certainty what the outcome was going to be, budgeting for WNC, underspend of 110,000, 0.03%. Second year, overspend of 300,000, 0.09%. Third year, underspend up by 220,000, 0.6%. In those 3 years, hitting budget by a difference of 0.6%. Chairman, that is evidence of doing the boring things well. That is evidence of competence at every level of the administration in dealing with the budget. The naysayers who say that things are going to go from bad to worse in the future, that's nonsense. To look at the evidence, look at the past performance of this authority of the last 3 years, and I'm sure that the same will be the situation if we look at this year's outturn in 12 months' time. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Could you press your button, please, Councillor Shepherd? Thank you. Councillor Mike Hallam, do not press your button.
Thank you for the heads up, Chairman. I wanted to talk about IT. I actually really enjoy my discussions with Councillor Al-Harabi and his input into all things IT. But I have to pull him up on his comments about getting rid of IT staff, as he only gave half the story, didn't explain the why, and didn't mention anything about the new roles that we've hired. Now, I've given this example before, but I'll give it again. Remember the days when your laptop was slow? You'd go to IT and to the PC support specialist, he'd get his screwdriver out, add some memory, and fix the issues. Those days, and the technology has changed a lot, those days are gone. Good luck taking your screwdriver out and fixing one of these things, as anyone knows that they go wrong, or an iPad. So yeah, some job roles have changed, and we've got new roles, cloud specialists, support architects. We've focused on cyber too, and yes, we're starting trials on AI. And with those trials we've started, it was featured on BBC News the other week, and I've had a number of local companies already contact me and ask about the innovation that we're doing and the work that we're doing, saying, how can we help? Tell us more about what you're doing. And speaking of learning from other councils, I've had a senior Labour councillor from another authority reach out to me too. I'd say others are looking to learn from us, not the other way around.
Thank you. Councillor Jonathan Harris.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a few points, if I may. There are some really core areas this year that we must deliver on, and we all support the purchasing of homes for children. But we have to deliver on it, and it's a really good example of something that took too long to come to the table, and we're already in a situation where we're running to catch up with it fundamentally. So we must have that assurance that it will be delivered on, otherwise we will not make any progress on that. The other point I want to make is it's lovely to hear everybody talk about prudence. Well, memories are extremely short. Not so long ago, a council called Northamptonshire County Council, which was the forerunner of this council, was one of the major pioneers in Section 114. And actually, we saw no end of cuts to preventative services that took place during those times. Children's, highways, young people, all of those things stopped. Is it any surprise that we are now running to catch up with some of those fundamental issues? Of course it's not. So yes, let's talk about the prudence. Prudence is one thing, but actually let's also remember to balance the books. We have also done some capitalisation to balance our books as well. And yes, Malcolm, your favourite word, contingencies, they are there to be spent. But the point is, all of those have gone into the pot to make those balances. I want to make one final point. Let's spread the love around. I agree completely with Councillor McCall. The social care issue needs fixing. And kicking it down the line for 3 more years, which Labour have done, will not solve that problem. And I really urge my Labour colleagues to do all they can to push as hard as they can to get that fixed much quicker. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now return to Councillor Parker, with there being no other speakers, as he'd reserved his right to speak.
Nothing to add, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will now ask Councillor Longley to reply to the debate on the budget.
Thank you, Chair. Well, there's some interesting points come out of that, I thought. I'll pick up the ones I thought were sensible and do my best to answer that. I thought, Ian, your comment on AI was worth explaining. Quite right, good point. 5 million was originally conceived to put into the budget, and therefore we thought, well, first of all, go back another year or so. You may recall, some of you, we put $500,000 in for AI research and see what was happening on IT systems, just as sort of corn feed, as it were. A number of projects took place. We put 5 million aside for the expected productivity improvements in the coming year. Looked at the pilots, some of them a bit duff, some, yeah, might be okay. Can't see anything in the short term. There's no way we were going to get 5 million. So we took the view, we'll take it out, and that's what we did. However, we should expect to see some input towards the latter end of the year, maybe earlier. I don't know, remains to be seen. That is not in the budget. So hopefully that will go the right way. So that's worthy of note. I thought the other important or interesting point that came up was the two people that spoke about the 28 million in the medium-term plan. I thought that's a fair point. I thought I'd explained it in the earlier, but what it is, you've got to bear in mind how prudent these things are. I've never been a great fan of medium-term and long-term budgets because time you get there is always different, you know, so you've always got to bear that. But you've got to do something. So it's the first shot, prudence prevails, lots of things in there, and I think they'll just drop away, like they did this year, in fact. When you get closer to it, things change. But it's a good point. If you look at them, so 28 million is a relatively small figure compared to what we've been at in the previous years, so that's in the medium-term plan. And beyond that, it's 10 million. So I think that will drop away a bit, and then we'll cover that. And then I think it looks more comfortable beyond that. We'll see. So that was an interesting point, I thought. I'd thank Danielle for your vote of confidence there, Danielle, and move on. And I think that the other item that came, I thought the other good one was yours, Wendy. I think that that was worthy of note. Ideas. Said every year, I'll say it again, we haven't got the monopoly on good ideas, we know that. And any good ideas, we want to hear them. You know, like in the items you put forward tonight, you know, those that are good, we'll pick them up and run with some of them, you know, and jolly good. Just, you know, chuck the ideas at us. If you come up with something, throw the ideas out. You know, I'll mention the pension fund, because on the pension fund it's where the members of the pension fund are from all parties. There's Keith, myself, there's 2 or 3 others, and we get along very well. And it's been extraordinarily successful. There's been no politics. We don't bother with that. We get on with what we're there to do, and that's to get the pension fund right. And I think if this council perhaps did a bit more of that, we might do a bit better. Any ideas? Next year's budget, it's not going to be easy, but the last 3 haven't been either, for that matter. And it's always going to be the same. If the demand for children and adults continues to rise, and amazing that it does, then it will be tricky. You know, it always will be. So that's the key. And I come back to Ian's comment as always on that one. Contingencies, Bob. Well, was there somebody said it's my favourite? Where it was Jonathan? Was it? No, it isn't. No, it isn't. It's when I first met Martin, I was dead against putting in. I'd have put in 0, and he convinced me of the error of my ways, and we've done it. And he's been proven to be correct. Unfortunately, if it was in an industrial situation, there wouldn't be any in there, but there'd be some pretty tough choices along the way. So there we are. So. Other than those comments, the HRA is probably the other one pointing out. We're going to come to that in a minute, but it's not actually in the MPH isn't in house yet. There will be changes next year, and this council will decide on those changes. And I should wait and see, but that's clearly an area of significant consideration. Weak word, I mean more than that, but you know what I mean. Okay, then, Chair, then I would just move this budget, please, and if you would like to put it to the vote, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. There will now be a recorded vote on the substantive budget recommendations as set out in the report, and I will ask the Democratic Service Manager to take the vote.
The vote is now open, Chairman. That's passed. 42 votes for, 7 against and 12 abstentions.
Thank you. Item 7, Housing Revenue Account Budget 2025-26 and Medium-Term Financial Plan. I invite Councillor Malcolm Longley to introduce the report and move the proposal. You have 5 minutes.
Won't take 5 minutes, Chair, on this. Thank you very much, because I did go through the details of that as I was a bit earlier in this evening. But I would reiterate what I've said there, that it's been a disappointing year, and I think the whole approach needs reviewing significantly. There's some projects there that are looking in difficulties, need to solve them, and there needs to be a lot of work on that by this council. Next year when the changes are made, substantial changes. So I think if you look at the medium-term plan, I would say that, again, I take the view, beyond the 1 year, you tend to it tends to fade away. And I think that the likely changes that will take place during next financial year will maybe put a modified medium-term plan in the next council's budget. So on that, I would just go straight forward and move the issue, Chair. Thank you very much.
I need to invite Councillor Kevin Parker to second the proposal.
I'll second the proposal and reserve my right to speak, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any members of the council who wish to comment? Councillor Purser.
Yes, Chair. Just very briefly, just to acknowledge Councillor Longley's comments about the HRA. It's very important. Too many of the capital schemes have got delayed. We've got to improve our delivery. We've got to make best of the funds for our local residents in a timely way. So it's really going to be a focus in the coming year, whoever is in the council, on delivery. And we've got to get it right because it's too important not to.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Only to say that we obviously now have the new Housing Delivery Board in place to pursue the delivery of the Affordable Housing Delivery Plan to achieve exactly that aim. So we hope and we need that to be successful in its objectives. We've found ourselves in the unfortunate position that a lot of the schemes that were in the MPH pipeline weren't as realistic as we thought they were on day one. We've reacted to that, and we've had to do a far deeper dive than I think any of us expected to address the fundamental problems about delivering social housing in the current economic climate and in a town like Northampton and beyond. So we now have all of the key voices around the table, led by a strong independent chair, and we believe that makes us well placed to start really delivering something approaching the level of housing that we need. And it's a sad fact that there is still a gap between the identified need and what we believe is viable and achievable, even under that affordable housing delivery plan. But that can continue to be reviewed and reassessed as the years go on, and we'll certainly be putting as much pressure on developers as possible to meet their obligations on delivering affordable housing within new schemes.
Thank you. Councillor Beardsworth, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I will not take up the whole of that time. I'm very delighted we've got a board now in place that hopefully will actually be delivering quicker and faster than ever before for the houses that we desperately need in this area. And can I also say that we really need to look after our existing tenants and make sure that their houses are well maintained and looked after in a proper way. Unfortunately, this hasn't been the case in the past. A lot of places are falling into disrepair, and it's such a shame. So can we make sure that that's looked at as well and delivered for the people that live in our council housing? Thank you.
Thank you. I will now go back to Councillor Parker, as he reserved his right to speak.
Nothing to add, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I will now invite Councillor Longley to respond to the debate on the proposal.
Thank you, Chair. I was a bit premature before. Apologies for that. Well, I agree with you, Bob. I think we're all of a mind. So there's very little to say, but to move the report, and the real work gets done next year.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. There will now be a recorded vote on the recommendations as set out in the report. I will ask the Democratic Services Manager to take the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. The voting is now open. That's passed. 50 votes for and 7 abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10, 2025-26 Council Tax Calculations and Council Tax Resolution. I again invite Councillor Malcolm Longley to introduce the report and move the proposal. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Don't need 5 minutes. This report is a calculation based on the agreements or the acceptance of the previous budget. So there's very little to debate other than unless you want to bring your calculator along. So I move the report.
Thank you. I invite Councillor Kevin Parker to second the proposal.
Happy to second the proposal. Reserve any right to speak. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any members of the Council who wish to comment on this item? Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My group will be voting for this so as we can deliver our statutory services, but it is with a heavy heart that we do this because, we just seem all our residents are saying the same thing, that they're paying more for less. But obviously we understand that to deliver our services, we've got to vote for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ian McCord.
Thank you. I always find it rather interesting to look through the appendices when the council tax setting resolution comes forward, and particularly to see who's at the top and who's at the bottom and where the average is. And I'm sure Adam will be very pleased to know that it's reassuringly expensive in Nether Hayford, as they top the list. And where does the average citizen paying the average amount of tax, or at least within 20p of the average? In my ward in Old Stratford, I am Mr. Average. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Rumans.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, Wendy, I'm not letting you get away with it. You can't do the whole, it's with a heavy heart and more for less and all this stuff. The bottom line is either you put forward a proposal to not raise it and cut something else, or you accept it for what it is. They're numbers. Correct. I like you a lot, Wendy, but I'm not letting you have that one.
Thank you. There being no other speakers, I'll go back to Councillor Parker, as he reserved his right to speak.
Nothing to add, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I'll invite Councillor Longley to respond to the debate.
Straightforward, Chair. I move the report.
Thank you. There will now be a recorded vote on the recommendations as set out in the report, and I ask the Democratic Services Manager to take the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. The voting is now open. It's passed with 54 votes for, 1 against and 6 abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 11, urgent items. I haven't been advised of any items received. I would like to thank you all for speaking tonight, and I now close the meeting.